Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. If you could find a seat and good morning. Hello, hello. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. We're here. Whole health for people and planet. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. My name is Christine Vatovec. I happen to be the very fortunate person who is considered the Planetary Health lead for the Osher Center here at UVM. And I want to first make sure that everyone can hear me. Yes, everybody back there. Excellent. Hello, Amy, way in the back. We want to make sure too that folks out in Zoom land can see and hear everything clearly. So we have a moderator who is checking in on the chat. If someone would kindly just type into the chat to let us know that you can hear us, that's wonderful. And just a note here, this QR code that you are seeing, this will take you directly to the schedule in our Sched app that we are using. So feel free to take a picture of that if you want to see where we are throughout the day. We'll be here until about 3:30 this afternoon, so you can just follow along. In the QR code, also note that if you were unable to join us last night, or if you wanted to see a poster again, the posters are all directly uploaded into that site, so you can look at them and spend a little more time with the posters as well. I want to here echo the heartfelt sentiment that was shared by our director of our Osher Center, John Porter, on Monday, on Indigenous Peoples Day, when he welcomed the Osher Collaborative to our campus and really made it clear that to us, UVM's land acknowledgement statement is not performative. It's not just checking a box. It is very much sharing that we feel in the Osher Center and many among us in our extended community that the traditional ecological knowledge of the reciprocal connections between human health and nature that is held by many Indigenous cultures is aspirational for us. It helps guide our work, that connection between people and place. And so here we share with you UVM's land acknowledgement. The campus of the University of Vermont sits within a place of gathering and exchange, shaped by water and stewarded by ongoing generations of Indigenous peoples, in particular the Western Abenaki. Acknowledging the relations between water, land, and people is in harmony with the mission of the university. Acknowledging the serious and significant impacts of our histories on Indigenous peoples and their homelands is a part of the university's ongoing work of teaching, research, and engagement, and an essential reminder of our past and our interconnected futures for the many of us gathered on this land. UVM respects the Indigenous knowledge interwoven in this place and commits to uplifting the Indigenous peoples and cultures present on this land and within our community. We also want to recognize and uplift the diversity of perspectives that our community brings today to this gathering, both in person and online. We invite you all to be fully present with us today. We hope you will all feel seen and heard. And to that end, we invite you to bring your curiosity into our dialogue throughout the day. And echoing the words of Darren Harris, who was with us on Monday and Tuesday as the Osher Collaborative met, let us approach the day with inquiry rather than inquisition. So just reminding us in our academic roles to be curious about what we're hearing and open to allowing our own thoughts and ideas about this realm of planetary health to be changed by what we experience here together. Before we really get started with setting the stage, I want to acknowledge everyone who has tirelessly worked together to make this event possible over the past several months. And if you would not mind, I would love for folks to stand. Anisha, Catherine, Kara, Lisa, Jackie, Brenda, who is joining us online, Atra, John, Dan, Andy, Gita, Anne, Erica, Beth. Thank you all so much. We so appreciate all of the time and effort you put in this, and we made it. We're here. Very special thanks to Kara Feldman Hunt, who has the unique ability to make something that might otherwise feel daunting, like planning a summit, feel energizing, welcoming, and fun. Thank you, Kara. So who are we gathered here today? We are people here at the University of Vermont who are interested in and or working in already very clearly, very knowledgeably in planetary health. Give a little wave if you are from UVM. Hello, UVM folks. Thank you for joining us. We are also within UVM folks of our Osher Center. Give us a little wave if you're affiliated with the Osher Center. Wonderful. We are also members of the Osher Collaborative. We have folks from Harvard. Hello, Harvard colleagues. Karolinska Institute is not with us in person. They are in Sweden. Northwestern, welcome. UCSF, big contingent. University of Cincinnati, Barbara. University of Miami, hello. University of Utah. Oh, our Utah folks are not here in person. Perhaps they are joining us online now. University of Washington, we know Brenda for sure is online. University of Wisconsin, welcome. And Vanderbilt also might be joining us online today. So those of you who are from UVM, we are not alone in this effort. We are surrounded by amazing people who are really dedicated to planetary health. And you will have the opportunity to mix and mingle and chat with these folks throughout the day. And in particular, you will get to meet Atra Nusrat. She will be helping to moderate the afternoon. We are also members of the broader community. Any folks who are not associated directly with UVM, thank you for coming and welcome. We have students, we have trainees, medical trainees, we have postdoctoral associates. Where are those folks in the room today? Yay, welcome. Thank you for coming in person. I know since we have limited space in the room, we were asking many people to join us online. In particular, I will give a shout out to my students in human health and the environment and my remarkable teaching assistants, Kate Graysdorf and CJ Crook, who are joining us via Zoom. Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us. We have staff members. Where's our staff? Welcome. Thank you for being here. Faculty, all sorts of faculty are here. Administration is here. Our president, our interim president, Patty Prelock, is joining us. And visiting scholars. Where are our visiting scholars today? Welcome. Thank you for coming. So our summit is based on three main themes. We're going to just touch each of them. You will see throughout the day that we've asked our speakers to speak directly to these themes in some way. How is your work connected to these different pieces of the puzzle that we at the Osher Center really are thinking about? So healthcare, here we're thinking about both those direct connections. We have clinicians who are working with us in all sorts of capacities. We also have more indirect connections, people who are working in a variety of different places that support the ability for healthcare to be delivered. And throughout the day, I will challenge us to think about what is our definition of health and how are we all in some capacity supporting health care in new and different ways. They're not new and different, but we might think about them in a different way. We're also thinking about integrative health throughout the day, also called whole person health. This is this idea of integrating mind, body, and spirit when looking at the person in front of you. How are you? When you say, how are you to someone, how are they fully? Are they well in body, mind, and spirit? And here in the Osher Center and Osher Collaborative, we think about all those different evidence-based approaches that can be supportive of health, really preventing illness, promoting health, but then also really promoting healing when someone has entered into some sort of illness. And we think here about things like lifestyle medicine, nutrition, sleep, stress reduction, physical activity, nature contact. We think of mind-body therapies, things like meditation, yoga, tai chi, music therapy, and more. Biochemical therapies, functional foods, botanicals, aromatherapy, many more than that. Biomechanical, things like physical therapy, massage, and way more than that. Biofield and bioenergetic therapies, things most familiar would be acupuncture, but there are many others. Traditional ecological knowledge, things like Ayurveda, East Asian cultural approaches to health and healing, and indigenous wisdom. All of these different ways of understanding health and healing are things that we can look to that have strong evidence for them in our Western model for helping us to promote health and wellness. And the reason why we're all here today, planetary health, this understanding that our health, the health of our individual bodies, the health of our communities, the health of our civilization is very much intertwined with the health of the planet, and that we are increasingly understanding this and seeing this. And this summit, as this university, we seek to explore these connections so that both people and planet can thrive. So how to really begin in framing our conversation around planetary health? We could start with the 9 planetary boundaries, but many of us have shared this. If you have not become acquainted with the planetary boundaries yet, please come and speak with me, and I can point you to all the many resources that are out there that help us understand what is the actual health of the planet? What are our environmental scientists teaching us about all these different spheres and systems that determine the Earth's wellness? We could speak about the donut that so many of us have become acquainted with, but many of us have heard about the donut before. If you haven't heard of the donut, come and speak to me, but please also come and speak with John Erickson and think of the poster. There's a poster. If you go to that SCED app, Rigo Melgar is someone who presented a poster on donut economics specific to Vermont last night. So you can learn more about that. And we're always happy to think more about that with you and how to apply it in our communities. We could think about these things. I could share with you some of my research, but many of you have already heard this, the impacts of healthcare on the planet specifically, thinking about those flows. Where do our medical supplies come from? Where do they go? What is the waste that is inherent in the system? But many of you have already heard me speak about that. So I'll just put it up here. Instead of thinking about all those things and putting those things up here and really talking about them, I decided instead to ask you a question to help us frame the day. What would our world look like if all people were truly healthy in body, mind, and spirit? Would we have the devastating impact on the earth that we have had? Let's unpack that for just a minute. So let's start with all people. To me, this means that everyone would have equal access to all of the necessary components of a healthy life, from birth through death. All people. And that truly healthy, how do we break that down? This body, mind, spirit. So what does it take for a body to be healthy? What does it really require? Maybe just take a second and think about that. What's one thing that a body requires to be healthy? And because it's 8:30 in the morning, I'm usually teaching right now. And these are the types of things I ask my students to do. Turn to a neighbor and share one thing. What's one thing that a body needs to be healthy? Go ahead. So when I thought about this, I started with the basics. A body needs to be healthy by having clean air, clean water, nourishing food, healthy movement, quality sleep. Those are some of the basics that I thought of. Is there anything else that someone else added? ATRA, shelter, absolutely. In the back, social interaction. Interesting. So you're getting into the mind-body connection. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, I have that on the next slide, Jean. Ooh, yes, indeed, indeed. And again, we're trying to think of those connections. So here I was really thinking about the body. Repeat the answer. Oh, so that everyone can hear. What are the answers? I will continue to repeat. Thank you. So what would it look like for us to actually, like, we have so much expertise at this university in particular and in the collaborative around healthy food and nourishing food. What would it mean if everyone had access to nourishing food? That connects to our agroecosystems, our food systems. How would the health of bodies through nourishing food change the health of the planet by ensuring that the ways that we are producing food was so healthy that that connection, that relationship between our bodies and what we are eating was fully realized? Would we have the same system of food? Would we walk into our grocery stores and be overwhelmed by the seeming options that are really distilled down to just a few true ingredients? When you're in the cereal aisle in particular, right? The overwhelming number of choices, but it's really all the same. What would that look like if we approached nourishment in this way? I leave that as a question for you for us to ponder throughout the day. How about mind? What does it take to have your mind fully engaged in this healthy way, this mind, body, spirit? Again, turn to a neighbor. What's one thing you think of when you think of having a healthy mind? Yeah. So when I was thinking of what does it mean to have a healthy mind, thought of emotional well-being, psychological well-being, and social well-being. So starting to connect into some of those ideas that other people were, I believe, rightfully seeing the connection between body and mind in what's the social environment around us. Here it's really, to me, thinking about our actions, how we feel, how we think, how we behave in the world. What are the different conditions under which we need to create in order for everyone to have true health of mind? What might that look like? How does that connect to planetary health? Again, a question I leave you with throughout the day. And then how about spirit? What does it mean for your spirit to be well? And last time I'll ask you, turn to a neighbor or two. When do you feel fully well in spirit? What does that mean to you? So to me, when I think of spirit, I think of awe, of having those moments when, depending on what you are interested in, you feel connected to something bigger than yourself. For me, it happens when I am out in a dark field at night and I look up at the sky and I hear Carl Sagan in my mind. And I remember how infinitesimally small I am. And that makes me feel power because I'm connected to something bigger. It's not just me. I am whole because of this amazing earth that I share with all of these other living, breathing beings. So to me, that gives purpose, that connection to something greater. And here, I really think about something that I've heard from Sam Myers, the founder and former executive director of the Planetary Health Alliance, of the idea of human exceptionalism, that we have separated ourselves from nature. We have had domination over nature. What would it look like to be truly well in spirit? To me, it would being able to find that connection to nature in a way that, and I'll say this again later, when we say for people and planet, it's not people and planet, but it's integrated. In the same way we used to think of mind and body, and now it's mind body. People and planet, people, planet. We are the same. The air we breathe is the same air that we share with everyone. The water we drink is the same water that is circling through all life forms. Like, how do we really embed that? How do we turn to the traditional ecological wisdom of so many cultures to help us remember that we are a part of something much bigger than ourselves? So those are the questions that I leave for you. What would the world look like if all people were truly healthy? I believe, learning from Molly Kawahata, I believe that if all people were healthy in mind, body, and spirit, we would live lightly on this earth. We would not have the negative impacts that we have had previously. So how do we help each other in our communities get there? I believe that we have the power in this room and in this broader collaborative and across all of our universities to work together toward that end. And I'm so excited to be here with you and starting this journey. And I am going to now turn the podium over to Kara Feldman Hunt, who will help us bring our keynote speaker on. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. So nice to see you all. I also wanted to say my heartfelt thank you to you, Christine. It has been so much fun doing this with you, and I am just in awe of your efforts and your energy and your wisdom. And it's been really, really a pleasure. Yeah, Christine. So I have the honor of introducing Elaine Langevin. I met Elaine I think like 16 years ago when I was just starting my career in integrative health, and I was in awe of her. I'll say maybe a little bit intimidated. Um, and we built some really great things together, and she got us rolling. And I always put her on every presentation as the person, one of the three women for helping us get to where we are today. So Patty Prelock and Hélène Langevin, and of course, Laura Mann, where I started my career. But Hélène, it's been so amazing to watch your career. And we can say we knew her when, but now Hélène is the director of the National Center. I want to get it right. I'm like looking for my notes here. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. So it is a big deal. And we are so honored to have you with us today. Hélène's research is vast. I'm not going to go through it all, but she's going to share some remarks with us. So join us, Hélène. I just wanted to put it on the speaker view rather than the room view, so the folks on Zoom could see her. No, I'm here, the camera.
Not, excuse me, not the share screen.
No, on the shared screen, but I want our folks on Zoom to be able to see Hélène's face.
Okay.
So we were gonna do the cameras close up.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Sorry, just a quick.
We'll switch to your PowerPoint though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Want to test, does this work? Yep. Good, thank you. Right. Well, it's so great to be back at UVM. It's always great. I really love this place. Can't say enough about how special and wonderful UVM is to me personally. I also want to say a really quick one shout out to Kara, because Kara, I mean, you're right. I mean, we met such a long time ago, and I have watched I have watched you, Kara, as how you've been the powerhouse behind the evolution of this integrative health program now for so many years, and to see you now in this role, it's just fantastic. So thank you, thank you. I'm going to be talking about some of what we're doing at NCCIH on the area of whole person and planet health. And Christine just gave me the perfect introduction here, pretty much touched on just about every point I want to make. So thank you. So let's first talk about human health. And this little cartoon sort of depicts the kind of the difference in how we think about health versus disease, right? Because when you think about health, health is a whole person thing that we feel, that we experience, as opposed to diseases that sort of we tend to think about diseases of your heart or diseases of your muscles or your bones or whatever in a compartmentalized way. But when we think about health, we really think about the health of the whole person. And we also know that there are factors that are, for example, stress or poor sleep or an unhealthy diet or lack of exercise that impact a whole variety of diseases, pretty much all the major chronic non-communicable diseases, as we call them: diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, even depression, musculoskeletal problems. All of these issues are, they are, I say caused, but predisposed to by all of these sort of lifestyle factors. So we know that by intervening and helping people to improve their self-care, for example, to improve their lifestyle, it can have a tremendous impact. And the other aspect that I want to point out is the top of the picture here, that the progression between less healthy, less healthy, and disease does not only all go in one direction. There are opportunities, right, to restore health, especially when interventions are made at an early stage. But this is something that we really need to understand a lot better. We spend a lot more time in research understanding what we call pathogenesis, which is the creation of disease, than we do studying what we call salutogenesis, which is the creation of health, making the arrow and helping the arrow point in the other direction. How do we best support that? So a lot of this, of course, doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? We know that life throws us curveballs, right? We all have challenges that happen to us, stresses, things that are beyond our control. And this is why the concept of resilience is so important in understanding health. At NIH, we have a trans NIH working group that has working very, very hard for many years now to come at a definition, a working definition of resilience that we can use in research. And the way we define resilience is the ability to resist, recover, adapt, or grow from a challenge. And this can span all the way from, the way that cells, for example, can adapt to fight something like oxidative stress, to the way people can adapt following, say, the death of a loved one. So there's this whole spectrum of resilience that spans from the physiological to the psychological, and that is really a continuum of resilience that we feel that we really need to understand this better in order to understand health. Now, when it comes to our planet, it's really not that different. When our planet was born, it had no idea that it was going to encounter this enormous challenge that is us, right? And really, we are the most dangerous things that have happened really to the planet, or one of the most dangerous things. There's a lot of things that have happened to this planet since it started. But certainly now the threat that's posed by our species, our human species to the Earth is significant. And the two pictures that are represented here, on the left is our beautiful planet, and on the right is not the Earth. It's actually an exoplanet from a different galaxy, and the sun of this planet is not as nice and stable as ours. It has wide fluctuations in energy, and for that reason, that planet is not healthy. And I've put that, and it wouldn't sustain life. I've put this picture to remind us that this is how the Earth might look like in the future if we don't take better care of it. And we, of course, know some of the things. This is not an exhaustive list of the problems that are causing our planet to experience stress right now. But some of them have to do with our use of fossil fuels, of our land management, cutting down forests, our agricultural practices. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about agriculture in a minute. And we also know a lot of the solutions. We know that we need to do a lot of these things. We need to change how we eat, how we grow our food, how we use our energy, and how we manage our waste. The problem is that's hard to do. It requires a concerted effort, and that's why I really am going to evoke some of the themes that Molly Kawahata kind of so nicely kind of developed yesterday in her talk about developing not only a collective sense of hope that we can do something about this, but also a collective agency in working together to solve this. This is why I'm so excited to see this effort kind of coming together here at UEM, which I cannot think of a better place for a nidus of collective hope to come from. So here is just a cartoon depicting this kind of complex, multi-scale network that we are a part of. This network extends from the whole planet and all the way down to the individual organs and systems and molecules that compose our bodies. But we are part of this, and every part of this system is dependent on the other parts. So I'm going to use the example of nutrition to illustrate some of the things that we can observe and also can do in order to address what we call the nutrition continuum. And so if we go from left to right, starting from how our food is produced and grows, to how we are actually consuming the food, how we prepare the food, how we eat it, and what's on the plate, the actual things that we eat, the individual components of the food, and then down to the actual ingredients and further down into the molecules that compose the foods that we now digest and absorb. Now, of course, there's a dark side to this nutritional continuum. If you look at the top row, we can see that very often our agricultural practices are just simply appalling. That there's areas of many areas in the country where people do not have access to foods to fresh foods, that they get their food from a convenience store or even a gas station. That fast food has become now such a pervasive way to eat that very often people will grow up in families where food is not cooked in the home. And so people grow up without the knowledge of how to cook food. The food is very much geared towards this quick consumption, and also this ultra-processed additives to the food are making the foods even more addictive, and so food can become a problem. There's this kind of compulsive and craving that surrounds the foods that we eat, that perpetuates a cycle of unhealthy eating. And finally, and I think this is an area where we don't talk about this enough, dietary supplements are in such abundance, so easy to obtain. Very often, they are actually used instead of food to get nutrition. And we think this is an area that really needs a lot more attention, because it is really a big problem in this country and worldwide. So let's look at an example of a compound that we all hear a lot about, flavonoids, right? So this is an example of these molecules that are called antioxidants, right? We hear about this, right? We say, we should have, grapes or red wine or chocolate, right? So a lot of these types of foods have these types of compounds in them. So it's very interesting when you think and when you look at what these compounds do. At both ends of the spectrum, they seem to be related to resilience in a very interesting way. So a plant, right, when it grows in soil that is exposed to the vagaries of the weather, right? There are times when there's more water, less water. If a plant is exposed to, say, for example, a week of drought, right? What it will do is it will increase the synthesis of these flavonoids to help it deal with the temporary stress of the environment. This is actually a healthy thing that the plant can do. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, you can see that the same molecules are associated with, in humans, similar benefits in order to have healthy vascular function, immune function, lipid metabolism, and it can even be helpful in aging. We observe this in, say, population studies in people who consume lots of fruit and vegetables, for example, that they tend to have better immune function, et cetera. So, but how does this actually happen, right, is something that we need to understand better. And here's another very interesting piece of this. So we know that the microbes that are in the soil, right, are essential for the plant to actually metabolize and create these flavonoids that will then help the plant have resistance. And if we go to the end of the spectrum in us, the microbes that are in our gut also play a very important role in helping us break down some of these polyphenols that are too large for us to be able to utilize. And then these smaller molecules are able to go to our brains, for example, and other parts of our body in order to help us to be healthier. So you can see here now already there's another layer to this, right? It's not only that these molecules can have an effect across the nutrition continuum, but they also interact with the microbiome of both the planet and us. So you see there's a very, very interesting connection there. Now, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into these flavonoids and antioxidants, because this is an area where I think there has been a lot of confusion. There is a phenomenon called hormesis, which is something that we have known about for over 100 years. Yet we have not paid enough attention to this because it's a complicated phenomenon. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit what hormesis is. Typically, if you look at the two diagrams at the top here, when we look at what we call the dose response, right, of something, it doesn't matter what it is, a chemical or even something like ionizing radiation or another stress in the environment, we usually think of the dose response as being either linear on the right, so that the more of the stimulus, the more the response, or on the like next to it, I don't know if I can see if I can use this pointer over here. There we go. That there's a threshold, so that you have no effect up until a certain point, and then all of a sudden you start getting an effect. And these are the two types of dose response curves that people are used to looking at. Now, if you look at the two dose response curves on the bottom, they look a little bit weird, more weird. So they are biphasic, right? And so at the lower end, you have an effect that goes in either one direction. So in this case, you would have inhibition here. And then you pass a point of like kind of inflection point, and then you have excitation or stimulation. And then on the right, you have the opposite effect. You have inhibition at the lower end and excitation at the higher end. What that means is that this is a nonlinear dose response that is observed in nature across the board. But usually what happens is we miss the lower end because either we don't look at it, or it's not, these effects are kind of easy to miss because they're not high in amplitude. Typically, these lower dose effects are between 30 to 50% of change, which is not a lot, compared with the higher dose effects, which can be 3, 4, 10-fold, right? So when we do our experiments using dietary supplements, for example, and we look at the effects on immune function, whatever, we tend to use the higher doses because, first of all, you get cleaner experiments that way. You have to use fewer replicates, and you get effects that are sort of probably more reproducible. So most of the research that we do, and a lot of this on vitamins, supplements, all of that they're all done at that higher dose. So I'm going to show you a very, very interesting paper that where they bothered to actually look at the lower dose. And as you can see, the data are sort of not very, they look like they're kind of confusing at first. But if you bear with me, so first look at the blue dots here. You can see that this is the effect of resveratrol, which is a flavonoid, right, on cell viability. So this isn't a dish. These are cells to see how healthy are the cells. And you can see that when you give increasing doses of this resveratrol, there's a little bit of a bump in viability. It goes up to 125%, not a lot. And then it comes down, but look how it dramatically falls after about 100 micromolar down here on the right-hand side. And what that suggests is that higher doses of resveratrol is actually not that great for these cells, right? Now, what happens at the lower doses? Well, if you inhibit the yellow signs here, if you give the glutathione, which is an antioxidant, you nullify the effect. What does that mean? Does that mean that the resveratrol was actually an oxidant? And that's the opposite of what you would think, right? Then they looked at an effect here of this enzyme, catalase. And catalase is an antioxidant enzyme that the body produces. And they saw that it was increased, but only at the lower dose. So their hypothesis was that resveratrol was actually an oxidant, not an antioxidant. So they tested that. So the next experiment, you can see up in the upper right, they did very careful replicates. And they looked at the effect of resveratrol over time. And you can see that there's a bump in the reaction of the production of what we call reactive oxygen species. This is oxidation, not antioxidation. And then at the bottom in the blue bars, they looked at genes that were produced to produce the body's own antioxidant response. What that means is that the resveratrol was actually causing a mild stress, and the cell was responding to that stress by becoming more resilient to the stress. That's what was happening. So in this paper, what they're proposing is that this resveratrol is actually having a very different kind of effect than what we normally think. It's a hormetic effect, and it occurs only at the lower dose, and it is an effect that actually helps the body boost its own redox environment to shift towards an antioxidant state, but by itself. It's not the resveratrol that's doing it. It's the body that's doing it. That's the main difference. And by doing that, it makes the cells more resilient to future insults, future stresses. So this is still a theory that's in the middle of being tested, but we think at NCCIH, we think this is extremely important. And we think that we really have to really rethink how we think about research on dietary supplements and especially antioxidants for that reason. So, okay, so here's the question. How can we build resilience across the nutritional continuum, right? I've already hinted at that, right? One thing I talked about is better understanding the effects of molecules as they interact with our bodies, in our environment, in an environment. But let's talk about the soil for a minute. So talk about soil health. This is a very, very important piece of this, because I already hinted at the importance of the microbes in the soil. But let's talk about carbon, because we all know the problem we're having with carbon right now. There's too much carbon in the atmosphere. Part of that is because it's being produced by burning fossil fuels. We all know this. But another really, really important source of carbon in the atmosphere comes from the soil itself, surprisingly. So what happens is we know that plants, when they are during the day, they are able to produce, to take carbon from the atmosphere and fix it through photosynthesis, right? And then they produce oxygen. That's great. And then the carbon becomes the plant, right? It helps to build the molecules that the plant is made of. And then part of that is at the end of the plant's life, when the plant dies, it essentially decomposes, and this carbon goes back into the soil. And so the soil is a source of, is a great way to fix the carbon that the plant produces in response to this photosynthesis. But then there's also this other opposite effect, which is what respiration, in a sense, is that both the plants and also the soil, they breathe also, and they exhale carbon dioxide. And so there's the production and the fixation of carbon dioxide and also the respiration act in kind of concert. But the important thing to realize is that the ratio of fixation of carbon when the soil is and the plants are healthy is about double. You actually fix more carbon than you breathe out. So it's a net positive gain. But if the soil is unhealthy, if the soil is unable to hang on to this carbon because of the overuse of fertilizers, the loss of carbon from the soil is greatly increased. And if you look at the ratio, normally the amount of carbon that is exhaled from the soil is 10 times greater than what we use in fossil fuel, what fossil fuels contribute. But you can see that by manipulate this, and you can have a big impact, right? And so working on the soil could really help us to counteract some of the effects of, not to say that we shouldn't be, that we should continue burning the fossil fuels, absolutely not. But by working on the soil and preventing the excessive loss of carbon through the soil, we can greatly, greatly reduce what's going on right now in terms of the global warming. So this is an area that I think places, for example, like University of Vermont, that has an agricultural college, that is in a state, which is a rural state, where a lot of agriculture takes place. I cannot think of a better place for an ecologically minded, planetary conscious faculty and group of individuals who want to put their energies to this. I can't think of a better place to actually make some of this happen. So I see Dr. Prelak here you know, I know this is your vision. I know that you have really looked at this and can see it. And I'm really so excited and applaud you so much for having that incredible vision, because I think this is the place where it could happen. Now, another thing is teaching kitchens. So I mentioned about food literacy. This is extremely important. If people don't know how to cook, they're not going to know what to do with the produce, that even if they have access to it. And so this is a movement that is going on in a lot of places in the country. There is a program, a teaching kitchen at the Veterans Administration program in the VA that is very strong. We're teaching veterans, you know, how to cook. There's also the Teaching Kitchens Collaborative, which is a wonderful nationwide, it's actually international now, that was started by Dr. David Eisenberg, who was the Osher Center director at Harvard before me. And so now he leads this really wonderful Teaching Kitchen Collaborative, where they put kitchens in schools, in churches, in community centers, in order to teach people how to cook. It sounds simple, but the nice thing about it is that they use this opportunity, once they have people in the kitchen, to talk not just about food, but about physical activity and stress management, right? Because it all goes hand in hand. It's all part of healthy lifestyle. And so this teaching kitchen piece is extremely nice. So again, I really emphasize now the continuum, right? That regenerative agriculture practices and food literacy can strengthen, right, our connections and our understanding of the connection between the planet, the soil, and people, and the health of all of that. Now, we all know this, right? And this is something that we need to not just acknowledge, but emphasize, that changing behavior is difficult to do in a sustained way. It's hard. How do we help that? And I want to just draw attention to this phenomenon, which I think is quite remarkable. It's called the overview effect. And the fact that when people go out in space, and we've known this now, people have done interviews of astronauts and people who've experienced seeing the Earth from afar, there's a universal sort of understanding that people come back to the Earth changed. They're different. They understand better not only our connection, the individual connection to the Earth, but there's almost a spiritual kind of what we call this a quantum effect, something that happens instantly, thank you, and also that lasts. And we've known that these types of experiences, we call them mystical experiences, have been described for millennia. They're a part of every religious tradition that there is. And so what is going on, you know, during those? Well, we also know that we can have insights and experiences, and Christine talked about the spirit, and you know, and you described it very nicely. Just being outside, looking at the sky, looking at the being in a forest, etc., being on top of a mountain, and that is a way to experience oneness with nature. And of course, meditation is also a way to experience this kind of connection with other. And this is just an interesting description of changes that people have described during meditation. So one is, you can see attention regulation, body awareness, emotion, but look at the bottom, change in perspective on the self. And this is important. This is something that can help us understand how contemplative practices can really help us not only understand that we all are connected. And so that on the left, I've put here, you know, kind of our what we would describe a feeling that is just beyond the mind and the body and the spirit. That's sort of the whole connection and sense of wholeness, of meaning and purpose, as opposed to being isolated, being lonely, and we talk about the deaths of despair that people experience. There's a real phenomenon going on, a lot of suicides, a lot of depression, and a hopelessness. And this is why, you know, yesterday's talk on hope is so important. I think it really belongs right in there. I want to just say a quick word about indigenous communities, Native Americans. I'm so glad that we opened the meeting with acknowledgement of this. The Native cultures that are land-based cultures that understand the spiritual connection to the land actually suffer the most from the damage that's being done to the environment, because they understand it's part of of their religious and spiritual life, their connection to the animals, to the plants, to the earth itself, is so strong. And so I just want to point a program that I'm very, very excited about at the NIH. It's part of the NIH HEAL initiative, and it is called NCREW. It's Native Collective Efforts to Enhance Wellness. We dedicated $268 million over 7 years to put research in the hands of the Native American communities, and to design research projects that they are actually in charge of, that they can self-direct the purpose and the research studies. Right now, it's really more emphasizing pain and substance use, but we think that this is a model that could be used. And a lot of these studies are actually, they're nominally to address substance use, but they're really about whole person health. And this is kind of, that's what we're hearing from the communities themselves. That's what they want to do. So we're very excited about that. And I want to just in closing, draw your, if any of you have not yet seen this extraordinary movie this is the latest movie by Ken Burns on the American buffalo. It's about returning buffalo herds to the Great Plains. Buffaloes are the animals that were spiritually the most important animal in Native American culture. And the fact that they were completely decimated to the point of being almost extinct. And they're now the herds are being restored. And interestingly enough, because the genetic pool had been so much crossbred with cattle in the West, they had to take a pair of buffalo from the Bronx Zoo that was actually genetically pure, and they put these animals back in the out west, and they started breeding, and now they have herds that are thousands of animals that the American Indians are managing themselves. And they are using these animals in the traditional way to hunt them and produce food for them. You can imagine how much meat a buffalo can yield and feed a family for the whole winter. This is how these types of cultures are being restored again, that are so important, connects food again with spirit and with the culture of the tribes. I think this is a really, really exciting program that really I think is long overdue, obviously. So just to kind of put things together, I think it's really clear that there is a connection, right, across all of these things, that the cure to our collective, despair, chronic diseases, unhealthy lifestyle is so linked to our problems that we have with our soil, our biodiversity, our environment, and our climate. And so the solutions are clearly linked. And this is why I think a program like the University of Vermont is starting is so brilliant. I also want to say that research is going to be so important here. We need to understand how to measure all of this. We have started at NCCIH on really focusing on resilience, because we think that once we can measure it, this is how we can demonstrate the success of the interventions that we are implementing. So we had a workshop just last month and on advancing the biomedical science of resilience, measures and metrics. It was a fantastic workshop. There's going to be a summary and recommendations as to what methods to use. This is something that the community, I think, will greatly benefit from in designing future studies that involve resilience at any level of this spectrum. And I also want to finish by just stating our definition our working definition of whole person health at NCCIH is empowering individuals, families, communities, and populations, and we've added now the planet here, to improve their health in multiple interconnected domains, so biological, behavioral, social, environment, and we've also added spiritual because we really feel it's an important part of this. So if I really encourage you to connect with us, follow us on social media, and check our website, because we have a lot of exciting new initiatives that we're going to be rolling out, and a lot of materials that I think are going to be very hopefully helpful to you all. So thank you.
Remove that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Langevin. I so appreciate seeing both the arc from the cellular and the soil and the parallel all the way up through the spirit and connecting to the planet. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and coming here with us today. And now we're just getting our switch back up here. Podium desk.
This is the deck.
And we'll just scroll back up to where we are here. Reliving all of those pieces. Okay, here we are. So the arc of the day from here forward, we will have a panel of 6 people joining us this morning. We will have individual presentations from each of those people. We'll have an opportunity for those people to ask each other questions, and then an opportunity for the audience to ask questions, and then time for the audience and our speakers to all think together about, all right, now where do we go with this? What are we learning from this? How do we move forward? So Atra and I, you will meet Atra this afternoon. She'll be leading the afternoon paddle. We were just discussing last night after the keynote, what are a couple other things that we can plug into here to try to pull things together to really help us all work together in these ways? And we decided to kind of parallel the morning and the afternoon by starting us off with a few different articles that have been recently written. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that we decided to share this article that we both worked on. This was an invited commentary for the Journal of Integrative and Complementary Medicine that Atra and I and our colleague Brenda, who's joining us via Zoom, and a local colleague here at UVM, Janet, we all worked on together. And I just wanted to share a few pieces of this to help us situate what our morning panel is helping us to do. And so in this particular piece, a few things that we said. The most important action we can take is to shift our own way of thinking and being from one based on separation and self-interest, which perpetuates division, to one based on interrelatedness and community, which engenders cooperation. And we're going to see that echoed throughout the different pieces of the morning panel in various ways. We also said one practical way to start seeding such a deep change is by prescribing therapies that help deepen a sense of connection to place. Nature-based therapy is one such example that strengthens relationships between individuals and ecological communities and supports our innate biophilia, our love of life. Indeed, allopathic physicians are increasingly prescribing, with good results, nature therapy to support wellness through pathways such as park prescriptions and forest bathing. And our first 4 speakers all touch on this in some way. So we thought that this would be an interesting way to just anchor us. So we're thinking about a call to action. How do we learn from each other this morning? How do we learn from all the amazing work that we drew on to write this paper and more to help us find that pathway forward? So this is our incredible lineup. Right now, I will keep speaking, and as I'm speaking, I'm going to invite our panel. If you want to come up, and we've kept the table here, the round table, open for you, so you can come and join us here, and that way you'll be able to see the presentations. So, there we go. You're welcome to sit at the front table, but if you do, you just won't be able to see each other's slides. So we'll have you all come up to the straight table after you've all had a chance to share with us. So as you're all making your way up here, just to let you know, we had 59 proposals were submitted to join us for this summit. And they spanned clinical care, research, education, and policy, all having a focus, which we requested was those 3 themes for planetary health, integrative health, and healthcare. And our incredible planning committee selected the talks, 12 today, 6 this morning, 6 in the afternoon, that we felt best represented a connection between those themes in some way. And of course, you were able to see the posters last night that touched on many of those themes and some of them integrated as well. We just simply didn't have space for everyone here. So the arc of this morning session begins in clinical care, examining nature as medicine. We'll move into the practice of cultivating a mindful approach to personal health, relationships to planetary health, and then the co-benefits of integrative mind-body movement practices. From there, we broaden the scope to examine the role that forests in particular play in promoting human health and well-being and connection. And then we turn to gain perspectives of 2 of the integral parts of healthcare, the role of planetary health in training medical physicians, and the role of the healthcare system itself in promoting a more sustainable pathway forward. So that's the general arc of where we will be today in the morning session. Friendly reminders to our speakers. We have given them the hard task of trying to keep it short, but also giving some expansiveness. It's a little bit less intimidating than the 4-minute gunned approach, Taylor, but we've given them 7 minutes, which is not very long. And we've asked them to both give us a brief glimpse, your kind of quick overview elevator speech. What is it that you do here? So we just get a taste of it to make us interested, to whet our appetite. So we want to learn more. And we've then asked them also, please tell us, how does your work connect to these themes, integrative health, healthcare, planetary health? And they're all connected in some way. And we're going to pull those apart with each other. You will, just friendly reminder, we have a wonderful timekeeper, thanks to Christy. She will show you friendly time slides. You have 2 minutes left. You have 30 seconds left. And then as we reach time, I will just kindly come and join you up here and give you a little nudge. So welcome to our speakers and thank you for joining us. It is my absolute delight to welcome our first speaker, Dr. David Victorson. He is a psychologist, Professor of Medical Social Sciences and the Director of the Flourishing in Society and Health Research Lab in the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. Dr. Victorson serves as Director of Integrative Oncology at the Cancer Survivorship Institute at the Robert H. Lurie Comprehensive Cancer Center. He's the principal co-founder and director of a nonprofit called True North-TREX that helps young people and caregivers affected by cancer connect with nature, community, and self. It's really quite remarkable. I highly recommend going and checking out True North-TREX website. His research program focuses on the role of mindfulness-based emotion regulation, deep social connection, nature contact, and positive health behavior engagement in promoting health, well-being, and flourishing in people, population, and the planet. What a remarkable person to have kicking us off here on our panel. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Victorson.
Okay.
Or you can.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good morning. All right. So I have nothing to disclose, and today we're going to contemplate our relationship with the natural world, talk a little bit about some things that we can do to help promote that, and then also consider some novel behavioral strategies that we might be able to help to nudge and cue some of these behaviors. This has been known for millennia, but Western research is finally paying attention and catching up to the fact that our relationship with the natural world can be beneficial to human health. And we all know that it can confer numerous benefits spanning emotional, cognitive, physical, spiritual, social. Some of us have even called this nature as medicine. And we might even go so far as to agree with Hippocrates and say nature as healer of disease. And the irony isn't lost on us here in this room that it can also go the other way, that nature can also be patient, given some of the mistreatment, abuse, and neglect that nature has endured at the hands of humans. But framing nature as a healthcare service provider, while true, can also be limiting in that it promotes a one-directional, transactional, what can I get from this mindset? And, it's not that different, as was mentioned earlier, in what has happened to things like meditation and yoga as they've come to the West, from being a lifestyle practice to being something that we can get something from. It's also in contradiction with more traditional wisdom, where they cultivated a mindset and a heart set that nature is actually an extension of ourselves and vice versa, and that we're all incredibly interconnected. And that throughout millennia, ancient societies left lots of signs and signals about this interdependent relationship and how they benefited each other in sustainability and survival, in healing and in medicine. Practitioners of TCM and Buddhism and also indigenous practices, they've long asked the question, where does the person end and nature begin? Is it at the skin that comes in contact with the air? Is it before this when the oxygen is received into the lungs? Is the health of our lungs then separate or different than from the health of the air? We also know that human beings are made up mostly of water. And at what point are we also different than from the water systems in which we consume and interact with? Dr. Nicole Redvers, a naturopath who spoke at the last ICIMH meeting, likes to talk about the fact that that our cells turn over about every 3 months, and that we're actually a living embodiment of the lakes and rivers and streams in which we live. So if there is indeed no separation, are we then perpetuating the same kind of Cartesian dualism that we have successfully done with mind and body, but now with people and planet? So an Australian environmental philosopher, Glenn Albrecht, he coined the term the symbiocene, which comes from the Greek word companionship. And his hope is that this is going to be the next period of human evolution where we can symbiotically reintegrate ourselves back to the natural world in an interconnected way. So maybe if we could actually see ourselves as an extension, as a part of nature instead of separate from it, we might behave in ways that are more thoughtful, less destructive, and view these green behaviors no differently than we do other health behaviors like getting enough sleep and steps and water and fruits and veggies. We know that from lots of really good research that people's positive experiences in safe, natural environments can actually increase attitudes and behaviors of pro-environmental stewardship. We also know as psychologists and health behavior specialists that it takes more than positive emotions for change to happen. And that's a great foundation, but people typically benefit from more cues and nudges around these behaviors. And so we turn to existing programs like EARTHRx, which are taking off in the United States and in Canada. And early evidence suggests that there is some really good things that are happening from these prescriptions that are given to patients, reducing physiologic markers, things like depression and anxiety, and also just being more physically active. And this is also now extended to universities. There's a big campus EARTHRx movement as well, where counseling and psychological programs on campuses are also prescribing nature. And if we think about college campuses like this one, that's actually a picture of your campus. It's an incredible environment in which to do this. In fact, there is a symposia coming up I wanted to share when I was looking at this. It's free and it looks like it's going to be a great day to learn about how to incorporate EARTHRx on the campus. And so one popular behavioral strategy for building new health habits is to piggyback or habit stack one new behavior onto an existing one. So if you want to start flossing your teeth more, you might piggyback that onto your existing habit of brushing your teeth. So my idea or question is, what if during these EARTHRx conversations, where we're already talking about people going out into nature for 120 minutes a week to do this, what if we also included a second EARTHRx prescription on top of that? That might cue and nudge people to also begin to discern their behaviors and impact on the world. What if they could also get a prescription to make sure they take reusable grocery bags to the grocery store, or bring their coffee mug to work, or make sure they check their lights to see if we can convert them to LED lights? And so this might seem like a small thing, but every bottle that gets recycled is one less piece of trash in the landfill. And when you multiply it by millions, the impact can start to add up. So the piggybacking EARTHRx onto existing EARTHRx encounters, it can send a really important message to patients that the health of people and the health of our planet are inextricably linked. And also that they are both the responsibility of our healthcare system. It can also lead to people feeling possibly a little more empowered, maybe a little less eco-anxious. And based on yesterday's conversation, it might help people feel a little more agency and see a pathway so that they can feel some hope. So remember, even the smallest actions can have a really big impact. Look for piggybacking moments and of reciprocity to return the favor. And let's put our phones down and get outside. Thank you.
And you see why I was so excited that David was our first speaker. He's doing all the things. It's amazing. Thank you so much, David. So I'm going to get a little bit of assistance here in bringing our next speaker in. I will introduce him as we get the technology up and running. So it is a true privilege to introduce Dr. Bruce Barrett, who is joining us from Wisconsin. Dr. Barrett is a practicing family physician, a research professor and vice chair for research at the Department of Family Medicine and Community Health in the School of Medicine and Public Health at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, my alma mater. Dr. Barrett's research focuses on mindfulness meditation, mind-body interaction, behavioral health, environmental health, population health, and public health. Over the past several years, Dr. Barrett has led an interdisciplinary team of physicians, scientists, environmental advocates, and mindfulness instructors to develop Mindful Climate Action, an educational and behavioral change program designed to help people decrease their carbon footprints while enhancing their personal health and happiness. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bruce. You have the floor. Let's make sure we can hear you.
Hello, can you all hear?
We can hear you. Thank you, Bruce.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you for the first two talks. Those were spectacular. I think they fit pretty well with my 7-minute spiel, which you're about to hear. So can you throw up the slides, please?
The master again.
Or I can share my screen if that's easier.
That'd be better.
Okay, great, Bruce. Thanks.
Should I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Right. Can you see that now?
Yep. We can, if you can do like a full, yeah, you got it.
All right. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to be telling you about mindful eco-wellness, steps towards personal and planetary health, which is our current name for a mindfulness-based health enhancement program that originally started 6 or 7 years ago as Mindful Climate Action, which we like to say lives on the corner of green and serene. Our goal is to aim to improve eco-wellness, which I define as living life to maximize health, happiness, and environmental sustainability. Our program is based on Jon Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction. So it really is a mindfulness training program. However, it is aiming for those co-benefits of ecological sustainability as well as personal, mental, and physical health. And we follow ecological themes. So we start out learning breath meditation and also learning about the importance of clean air with a short 10-minute video by Tracy Holloway, who is one of the planet's preeminent air scientists. And then we discuss that after we've learned a little bit about greenhouse gases, particulates, and so on. And then the next week we do water, same thing. We do water meditations for most of the 2 hours of the class, but we also watch a video and discuss the importance of clean water, the hydrological cycle, how we are made of water, how the planet is a water planet, and so on. The next week is then based on food. We borrow Jon Kabat-Zinn's raisin exercise, and we also do mindful eating with some small portions of fruits and vegetables. Practice mindful eating, but then we also watch video and discuss how agricultural production leads to environmental destruction, how some foods have lower carbon footprints than other, and so on. The next week is on transportation, and we practice mindful walking while we learn about and discuss the benefits of physical activity and the harms of fossil-fueled mechanized transport. The next 2 weeks, which were originally in the 8-week curriculum on household energy and purchasing and consumption, have actually been replaced now with nature connectedness, nature immersion, like David was talking about. We've got a few different versions from 6, 7, or 8 weeks. I'm doing it as a group medical visit with patients in the University of Wisconsin Health System, UW Health. One of the reasons we changed the name from Mindful Climate Action to Mindful Eco-Wellness was not to stimulate negative reactions on those who don't like the terms climate action, for instance. We always end with ethics, which is really the why do we want our health? Why do we want a healthy planet? How do our personal values fit with our behaviors? There's lots of different things that can be considered eco-wellness behaviors. Most of them promote personal health while improving environmental health. But of course, there's an overlap. Some things are just eco behaviors and some things are just health behaviors. The typical carbon footprint of an American household is around 48 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per year. And as you can see from this graphic, the majority has to do with the burning of fossil fuels to move our automobiles around and to heat and cool our homes and places of work. But other things have high carbon footprints also, such as what we eat, what we buy, the services, our healthcare. These are very important. It turns out that somewhere between 60 and 75% of the greenhouse gases emitted on planet Earth by humanity come from individual level decisions made at the individual and household level. 2/3 of the carbon footprint could be reduced if we were able to choose truly healthy lifestyles. Eating lower on the food chain is a really big one. This graphic right here shows, this comes from a groundbreaking study, really, published earlier this year. Over 200,000 people were followed for over 30 years. They're able to catalog more than 50,000 deaths and therefore come up with an extremely robust estimate of health over time. And this graphic shows you the hazard ratio of those on the left who are meat eaters and dairy consumers for mortality compared to those on the right who are vegan or low carbon eaters. There's an amazing 20 to 30% reduction in mortality from eating better. This pretty much blows away every medical intervention that modern medicine has ever brought forward. Even bigger for our health is how we move. Physical activity has an even larger impact on our personal health than does eating. Those two together are more important than genetics and healthcare combined in terms of morbidity and mortality. The main thing to do with movement is to walk and bike more, to choose public transport, to not fly, one of the reasons I'm not with you today, or to reduce our flying to very absolute minimum, to carpool if we have to, buses, trains if we have to, but we have to reduce the carbon footprint of movement. And so in just under 7 minutes, thank you very much for listening. I wish I was there in person. It would be a much better interaction, but I'm here in Wisconsin and this is a great conference. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Bruce. We so appreciate both your commitment to walking the talk and also just sharing with us the remarkable work that you are doing, knowing that you are off to present this in other places later today. So thank you for making time for us as well. We appreciate it. And
you are welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Bruce.
This is a great group of people and a really good conference. Thanks everyone.
We're so glad you can join us, and stick around and we'll have you join the panel in a little bit too, Bruce. Thank you. And as we're getting our technology back over to this computer, let me introduce to our next speaker, Dr. Peter Wayne. He is the Bernard Osher Associate Professor of Medicine in the field of complementary and integrative medical therapies at Harvard Medical School and serves as the director for the Osher Center for Integrative Medicine at Harvard and Brigham and Women's Hospital, though there is some change behind the hospital name that's happening, so just be aware of that. And the primary focus of Dr. Wayne's research is evaluating how mind, body, and related integrative medicine practices, such as Tai Chi, acupuncture, and chiropractic care, clinically impact aging and chronic health conditions, while also understanding the physiological and psychological mechanisms underlying observed therapeutic effects. And on a personal note, I will say again what I've said before, that both it is a pleasure to work with you, and I'm so grateful to you for hiring EARTHRx. So thank you for joining us, Peter.
Well, thank you, Christine, and thank you to EARTHRx, and thank you to everyone organizing this conference. And I feel like the first two speakers did this sort of mic drop. There's not much more to say, but I'm going to try to unpack a little bit more of what we've heard in my short presentation today. So I think we've heard from both speakers, but especially from David, that we believe that exposure to nature is really good for your personal health. What I'd like to explore in this sort of habit stacking, I've never heard that term, it's fantastic, but also this sort of co-benefit is, are practicing mind-body integrative therapies, which we know are good for us, also good for the planet? And we sort of unpacked this a little bit. We've already mentioned Atra, and Iman and myself, another Osher fellow, Osher faculty member, explored this idea of reciprocity. Is integrative medicine a good prescription for patients and for the planet? And I think there's good data out there to suggest, and Bruce's talk really unpacked this, that doing these sort of integrative therapies are good for the planet. And one of the ways is simply, I'm just going to pick Tai Chi research, which is an area I'm experienced in. We reduce falls, we change cardiorespiratory events that send people to hospitals, we reduce use of pain procedures, etc. So it's lowering the utilization of the healthcare system, which we know is a significant tax on our ecosystems in terms of carbon budgets and pollution. We also know from some of what we've already heard that these practices can change self-efficacy. If we can keep people healthier, they're going to walk more, they're going to bike more, they're going to make better choices about diet, they're going to change their consumerism. Consumerism is a huge high-cost carbon footprint. And so we know that there's benefits to both individuals and the planet. But what I want to explore a little bit more is this idea of biophilia that was introduced by E.O. Wilson, who in my prior world, I was an evolutionary biologist and got to be a teaching fellow with E.O. Wilson, and he was an incredible human being. But is there a way in which this work really changes our relationship to nature and our care for it? And I'm going to sort of geek out a little bit on the science that brings us to that sort of to a better understanding of that. So there is good data out there. It's growing. It's not perfect. That doing these practices make us nicer people. There's better pro-social behavior. And there's some nice reviews on this and growing data. One lab that's actually in Boston, led by David Distano, has done some really fun creative work showing that exposures to meditation actually makes people nicer. And here's the setup in this study. And they're really fun. I'm really want to talk to David more about this, but psychologists develop these incredible experiments. But in this case, people were exposed to 2 types of meditation or a control group, and they were brought back in for their follow-up measure, they were told. And that follow-up measure included neuroimaging. And while they were sitting in the waiting room to be called, there were 2 other people who were plants, Confederates. And then a third Confederate comes in with crutches, and they're waiting to see if that participant is kinder after doing meditation by giving up the seat. And then they start groaning a little bit, and there was a 5-fold increase in the time, the shortness of the time it took for them to actually kindly get up. So we don't need to do instruments. And interestingly, the Confederates were there on their cell phones actually timing this. So it was a lovely experimental setup. They've replicated this in large scale studies, and that literature is really interesting. This has also been done in some studies in Switzerland where compassion-based training, but not cognitive behavioral training or Italian language training, makes people more compassionate, including when they're asked to think about someone that they dislike actively. After just a few weeks of training, they become more pro-social, even to people that they dislike or disagree with. Another mechanism that's embedded in these practices is gratitude, and not only gratitude for itself, but gratitude to others. And again, this is some work from David Distano's lab, where they set up these really interesting procedures. And in one case, people are doing a task that they told that the studies about cognitive behavior, but their computer breaks. And they're having some trouble. And in one of the scenarios, people come in and they're very kind and they help them resolve the computer issues. We see some issues up here, and gratitude is elicited, and they can measure this. In others, someone comes in and just humors them, and in the third one, they just chat and distract them. And what we find is that even these little exposures to gratitude in these moments change your willingness to help others, this pro-social behavior. So embedded in these mindful practices is changing this behavior. There's also some a good literature to suggest that if you write about things that have made you grateful, as opposed to just happy or very everyday things, it changes your ability to alter your allocation of resources to others, right? And we think that these probably translate into nature, and I'll show you some of that in a second. This one's really interesting to me as a Tai Chi movement person, and Mind Body has movement. This is another one from David DeSteno's lab. There's more research on this. But in this case, people are brought in and they're told, we want to study the relationship between your ability to tap your finger in response to a sound and your cognitive abilities. And we're going to test a few people at the same time. The person across from them wearing headphones, presumably listening to their own rhythm, are tapping. But what they don't know is that they're being randomized to people that will tap in sync with them or tap out of sync with them. And just having someone move together unconsciously changes this relationship, and it leads to greater compassion, which they can measure, and then helping them in another setup task. So moving together. There's a little bit of data out there that cultivating this mindfulness or mindfulness traits make you more connected to nature. So that literature is growing. So there's that link there between what we're learning in pro-social behavior and pro-biophilia. And that literature, I think, needs to be expanded, but I think it's there. This is the one study, and I can't unpack it, but this just came out about a month ago, and it's blown my mind. It's by this woman named Lindsay Barnum. And basically what she has done, this is empirical data on 300 people. She's looked at interoceptive awareness using what some of you know as the Maya scale, multidimensional assessment of interoceptive awareness. It's a mouthful, but it's your awareness of your inner emotional states. She has shown that set of traits predicts your connection to nature. Right, so she's made that link. But more important, equally importantly, she's used sort of attachment theory and secure attachments that sort of predict that. So your comfort with yourself, your openness to really meaningful relationships with others actually translates to your relationship to nature, and that those are linked to pro-environmental behavior and to your well-being. And she's done this with the most elegant structural equation modeling. So it's not just a thought experiment, but real data. And her conclusion here is the more aware a person is of the connection between their inner bodily sensations and emotions, the more they can bond with nature. So the more we benefit ourselves, the better for nature. This is a quote from my friend Yang Yang. He studied these older women and men, mostly women in the Midwest. I just want to read this quote. Give me a couple of seconds here. But it's about this connection, how the more we go in, the more we connect. And these are Midwestern people who are not sort of hippie folks to start with. They're church-going women. But it says, she wrote, Tai Chi gives a way to create a spiritual moment that's also very helpful. I'm more aware of my spirituality. I would have never thought, when you're doing your meditation and you're bringing energy in, that's God's energy. It's going to be part of me. Like when we do washing your organs or gathering nature, that's God's energy washing through me. It's something that offers an opportunity for connecting myself to a spirit within that is part of a whole. So the further in we go, the more we open and feel connected. Joanne Macy talks about this crisis. I won't read this, but it's about this notion that we're separate. And that separation within ourselves, feeling we're separate, really is the underlying problem in our connection to nature. So to conclude and sort of link to what Bruce and David are saying, I think that there are these clear co-benefits. It's not only doing mind-body practices are not only good for ourselves, but for nature. I, as a geeky scientist, think if we can understand these processes a little deeper, how we elicit compassion within ourselves, gratitude, how moving together might lead to biophilia, we can develop better interventions. And then again, linking to Bruce's work, I think doing this in nature makes sense. Can we teach people these internal practices, these contemplative practices, while we're co-educating about nature and really articulating that integration? So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for pulling all those things together in different ways. And I think that's what I'm most excited about for today is hearing all these different perspectives and how do they overlap and how do we support each other and pull pieces from each other and reconstitute them in these new ways. So thank you so much. Next, we're going to turn to the work of Dr. Brendan Fisher. And right, we've been kind of in this direct healthcare setting realm, and now we're moving out. So stay with us in our flow. And Dr. Fisher is a professor in UVM's Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources. He studies the drivers, both economic and non-economic, of pro-environmental behavior, so connected in very many ways to what we've been thinking about, and also the health benefits people derive from nature. His research and fieldwork lie at the nexus of conservation, development, natural resource economics, and human behavior. He has co-authored 2 books, Valuing Ecosystem Services and A Field Guide to Economics for Conservationists. He teaches courses in sustainability science, behavioral economics, environmental and ecological economics, ecosystem management. Speaking from personal experience, he is a very insightful and delightful human, and he is a treasured member of my own UVM community. So thank you so much for joining us, Brendan.
Thanks, Christine. And thank you, Kara and President Prelock and everybody who organized yesterday, last night, and today. It's been amazing. I'm a note taker, and I have so much homework to do after this. It's been brilliant and inspirational. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about research where places on the earth have high levels of biodiversity and high levels of human impoverishment. And those areas overlap quite a bit, and particularly in the tropics. And when you're studying and collecting data and doing research in these areas where these overlaps happen, it's very obvious. It hits you right in the face of how important well-functioning ecosystems are for human health. It is obvious, it's right there. So from the simple example of, in many places in sub-Saharan Africa, households still rely on fuel wood or charcoal. About 90% of the households in certain parts rely on fuel wood or charcoal for cooking and heating. So the very action of being able to feed yourself or stay warm is a conversion of standing forest to heat. It's so important to have these ecosystems functioning in these areas. And about 12 years ago, a colleague of mine, Taylor Ricketts, who I think you might hear from later today, or maybe not, at the big thing. Okay, so if you come after this event, we wrote this grant. And what we did was we gathered a whole bunch of people into a room. We had some MDs, we had experts in public health, we had geographers, economists, ecologists, biologists, conservation scientists, anthropologists, marine biologists, several other gists. And we decided that we want to really try to unpack how changing ecosystems affect human health outcomes. And so we created this database with existing data where we were able to collect data on households all over, especially in least developed countries, on the wealth of the household, the materials the household was made out of, floors, plumbing, water, distance to water, a whole bunch of characteristics within the household, and about the gender and age and education of household members. Lots of ecological and climate data like forest cover, deforestation, rainfall, drought anomalies, rainfall anomalies, etc. How many livestock are on the landscape. And then health data, so real biometric measuring of things like the height and weight of children, so we can look at stunting and wasting, anemia, parasitemia, fever, mortality, diarrheal disease, dietary diversity, so a whole bunch of things. And we wound up with this database, this massive 400 or so variables and over 100,000 observations, so really big data. And with that data, what we were able to do was isolate the effect of well-functioning ecosystems, and in many of the cases, understanding the isolated effect of having forest in the watershed or near your household or near your community has on health outcomes. And what we found was that forests really have a big impact on reducing diarrheal disease, which is the #2 cause of mortality of children under 5 on Earth. Increased dietary diversity, reduced stunting, which afflicts about 100 million children on the planet, reduced anemia, and reduced malaria incidence. So huge impacts of having forest near or in your watershed. But we found out that these impacts weren't universal. And so our diarrheal disease impact was really only for folks in rural areas. Dietary diversity, most significant for the poorest households. Reduced stunting for the poorest households with actual access to the forest. So not just in their watershed, but they could actually access it and walk to it. Reduced anemia, but mainly for the most educated. So those households that knew how to collect, we see vitamin C and vitamin A rich foods from the forest and know how important and significant they are. And reduced malaria, but only for the poorest households and those that are in the range of specific mosquito species. So the mosquitoes that prefer to bite during the day, so during working fuelwood collecting farming hours, and those who have preference for human blood over livestock blood. So nuanced results, but really clearly showing the impact of forest on human health. Now, in these areas, I said it's very obvious, this impact, and a bunch of us that I work with are only slowly coming around to seeing that the effects are similar in places that are more developed. So we've worked a little bit more recently on looking at urban parks and forest in Beijing and in many Chinese cities, and then also here in Vermont, finding that, you know, the access to these things gives you access to improved air quality and have been critical for self-reported moods and the ability to practice cultural activities. This is in China, in times where air pollution is really high. So this spiritual connection piece. And during COVID and travel restrictions, we did studies here in Vermont showing that local forest, urban forest, and your local natural area that you could easily access, self-reported reduced stress, increased social connection. So this time when we are feeling disconnected, having these spaces to be outside in community with other people was really important to folks, and reported critical spaces during times of anxiety out there in the world. I think our work really sits clearly or carefully in the planetary health definition, where we're actually measuring a human health outcome at the level of the person or the community with a change or a conservation of an ecosystem. The integrated health, we're slow to coming around, but we are coming around to stress, anxiety, mood, and thinking about the whole person a little bit more deeply. And healthcare, Christine has been slowly nudging me to get involved, and our group, and loving the idea of trying to make some more impact and thinking about Nature RX. Again, a bunch of my notes for the last night and today are all about, oh my gosh, what do we need to learn in order to help? And we're happy even just to bring sandwiches to the meetings where we're thinking about healthcare and just being part of that community. Taylor and I often get to go around and give these talks, but the real kind of brains, energy, and strength behind a lot of the work we do come from our postdocs that we've had over the last 10 years, Renivo, Alicia, Diego, Robin, and Tefes. They're really the driving engines of a lot of the data we've done. And they're really the ones that has helped us bring evidence to the idea that investing in conservation, investing in nature is really an investment in human health. So with that, I'll end, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Brendan. I really appreciate your willingness to play in this space with us. And I feel like there are lots of good things that we can be doing together to expand, right? Here we're in this more expansive part of our arc for the morning. And you were just talking about, things that were making me think about, what can we do in the future? And this is what we're doing in the future. I'm very honored to introduce to you our next speaker, Chellie Nayar, fondly known as Chellie. She's a medical student in the University of Vermont Larner College of Medicine class of 2025. She's the lead author of the inaugural Planetary Health Report Card for our own College of Medicine here at UVM. The focus of her 2024 family medicine clerkship was Planetary Health, helping providers and patients prepare for climate change. When researching this introduction, like how can I introduce Chellie best? I came across this. She does not know that I was going to share this. And I have to say, when I saw this and I read this, I was speechless, as you are all in this moment, because this to me is the future of healthcare. Thank you so much for being with us, Chellie. Please join us.
Thank you, Christine. It's really amazing to be here with all of you and kind of learn from all of your experiences, and also kind of share the work that me and a lot of other medical students at UVM have done in this area. For me, I think hearing a lot of what you guys are doing has sort of just built on something that I feel has been a part of my life since really the beginning. Growing up in California, I think climate change and planetary health has been sort of a big theme of my life. I know, like, here you have snow days where school is closed because of the snow. When I was growing up, we had like smoke days and fire days because like our community and school was right at the foothills of the mountains that almost every year would have wildfires, and there would be days where the particulate matter was so high that we wouldn't even be able to go to school, and the administration would want us to stay home and sort of protect ourselves from those fires. And I think just being exposed to that from a very young age made me really inspired to find a way to act on that. And through medicine, I've seen a really incredible way to put that into action. But when I got to medical school, I was a little bit surprised to see how little we actually focus on learning about the climate impacts of health. And so I found the Planetary Health Report Card, which is a student-led initiative. It was founded by medical students at the University of San Francisco School of Medicine in 2019 and puts together a metrics-based initiative that has a standardized tool for evaluating planetary health at health professional schools, so anywhere from medical schools to nursing schools to pharmacy schools. And it's completed annually and updated each year and measures 5 criteria. So curriculum, research, institutional support, community outreach and advocacy, and campus sustainability. So why did we want to join? When I got to the UVM Lerner College of Medicine, I wanted to have a larger hand in planetary health, and I helped start a group of interested medical students in sort of being involved in planetary health. And the group of us were all interested in getting involved and finding ways that we could use our interest to actually make change. And this was sort of based on our experiences. And many of us, similar to me, grew up really feeling the effects of climate change from a very young age. And sort of knowing that climate change and pollution have a huge effect on health, that there's an inequality in who is actually feeling that burden, and that as people going into healthcare, we were also going to be large contributors. So we set out with the goal of joining the Planetary Health Report Card and evaluating our institution's curriculum and our impact as an institution on planetary health. We wanted to use this as a framework to build off of discussions to really increase our engagement in planetary health and provide a framework for improvement. I'm a big believer that education is sort of the best way to make change. I found that throughout my life, I was always inspired to engage in planetary health. And that was just because I was exposed to all of that information and exposed to sort of living in that kind of world, but not everyone is. And when you're a patient and you go to a doctor and your doctor doesn't have experience or knowledge to really grapple with those changes, I think there's a big disconnect there. And so we completed the report card last year, and I think people, especially in medicine, look at a C+ with horror.
There it is.
Okay, sorry. So we evaluated our curriculum and found that there is discussion of planetary health themes kind of sprinkled in throughout the curriculum, but it wasn't really integrated into what we do. And I know most people aren't necessarily familiar with medical curriculum, but you sort of do the preclinical in your first like year and a half to 2 years, and then you go into the clinic and see that stuff implemented. And then in your last year, your fourth year, you really integrate what you want to do in the future and sort of take more intensive rotations and more intensive clinical responsibilities to prepare you for actually becoming the physician that you want to be. And while we were learning about planetary health sort of here and there and sporadic preclinical courses, there wasn't really a unifying factor that really inspired students to understand the connections between the planet and our health. And while it was something that I saw in every clerkship, and while it's something I saw in many patient interactions, I wanted my peers to be able to see that as well. So with sorry. Okay. So with the completion of this report, we found that there were a number of ways to sort of a number of opportunities to take our work. And so we are hoping to integrate planetary health into the medical curriculum in various ways by introducing medical students to a lot of the factors that that they'll end up seeing in both preclinical and clinical experience. Increase support for students interested in planetary health, and increase the partnerships between our school, but also the university as a whole, which is doing a lot of work. I guess when I see my medical school experience, I see a lot of the values that I came into medical school with reflected in the work that I've done. And I want my peers and other medical students after me to be able to understand sort of all of the work that all of you all are doing in integrating that into their clinical practice. And in doing this, it is a team effort. And I think there are so many efforts and so many experiences that we've drawn on. It wouldn't have been without the work of other medical students and other interested people who are working to make planetary health a larger part of our medical experience. So thank you.
Of medical care, future of planetary health. They're together. They need to be together. So thank you so much for the work you're doing, Chellie. And now our final speaker for the morning. I am absolutely delighted to introduce Diane Imrie, who is the Network Director for Sustainability here at the University of Vermont Health Network. In her previous role as the UVM Medical Center Director of Nutrition Services, Diane introduced several innovative programs in the medical center, including culinary medicine and a nationally recognized sustainable food program, which I have to say, especially students at UVM campus know that the best place to get food on campus is at the hospital. You don't hear that often, right? Like usually hospital food, people are a little bit. Diane is amazing in the work that she has done to elevate nutrition truly, and in collaboration with our local farmers and the local community to make sure we have healthy, local, organic foods available. She also helped found the Medical Center Sustainability Council. Her work has helped elevate the sustainability work of the hospital in ways that have garnered national recognition and several prestigious awards, including the 2016 Silver Plate Award for Food Service and the 2024 Practice Green Health Emerald Award. So, Diane, thank you so much. Please come and join us.
Yes. Thanks. And the clicker is here. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Boy, some tough acts to follow this morning. So as Christine mentioned, I'm the Network Director of Sustainability. So our health network is 6 hospitals across Vermont and Northern New York, and home health and hospice. So pretty good span across our region. So we all know the call to action. The defining healthcare crisis of our time, but where does healthcare fit? So healthcare is a major polluter. 8.5% of our pollution in this country comes from healthcare alone. So we're taking more than our share for sure. But the flip side of that is there are so many opportunities to improve our sustainability initiatives. So today I'm hoping to share just a few of them with you and try to help you see where you might fit if you're not already in healthcare, or if you're in healthcare, where can you lean in a little bit? So these are what we call our sort of our major impact areas. And so if you're a healthcare provider, you probably see where you've connected with some of these areas before. I know a lot of folks say, oh, we've got to fix energy, but actually energy is only about 20% of our footprint in healthcare. So other areas, food waste, our food system, of course, lots of folks here know about that. Our supply chain, OR in particular, is a major contributor to waste. And then, you know, I think it touches pretty much everywhere across the system. So how do we know what to do? I'm not going to ask you to read through this, but we often rely on an organization called Practice Green Health for some guidance. They are an industry leader in solutions in healthcare. And so I was tasked to create a strategic plan or a roadmap for the network. And so I won't touch on all the detail, but just share with you the top 4 strategies that we are embracing over the next few years to have to lessen our impact. And so the first is obviously mitigation. So really focusing on our energy systems, transportation in particular, and supply chains. So thinking about how can we, as an example, convert single-use devices to reusables? Dabbling in resilience, but I will say this is new across the country, particularly new in Vermont, as we've more recently experienced the impact of flooding, et cetera. So really, we need to prepare as healthcare providers for a different future, and we need to prepare for our community expecting new things of us. Embracing really our leadership voice. So we come to the table in terms of all of the other health aspects that we're involved in, cancer, access, finance of the healthcare system. We now need to really start embracing our voice around climate change as the experts that we are expected to be. And then an engagement strategy. So I hope that you leave this discussion understanding that there's a place at the table for all of us. No matter what you do for a living, there is something that you can help with. Let's see. So I'm just going to do a couple of examples of what's going on right now. So I can't believe I'm talking about the fleet, because I think about my car as a great big purse, but now I'm a fleet manager. So significant component of our emissions across 6 hospitals. You can imagine we have a lot of vehicles. We use them all day long, 24 hours. I chose to focus on the fleet because honestly, it's easier than changing energy systems in buildings across our network. So we decided as a quick solution was to go with short-term leasing of vehicles so that we could change our fleet more quickly. Go with hybrid first. We have our first 3 hybrid coming in the next couple of months. They're on order. And then as we build out our EV charging system to be able to more quickly convert to electric. So obviously cost savings come along with that, decreased greenhouse gas impact, but another sort of whole health approach is that it's really going to be an employee satisfier. We have employees driving 15-year-old vehicles. So now they'll get a new vehicle and feel a little bit better in their work. So Planetary Health and how do we impact? If you've been in a hospital, you've seen blue wrap. You know what this problem is. If you haven't, I'll share. The operating rooms across this country generate 255 million pounds of blue wrap a year wasted. Up until, the last few years, there wasn't even a recycling stream for that. Kudos to our champion at UVM Medical Center right next door, developed the system that is being modeled across the country now for recycling. She was one of the champions at the table, but recycling really just isn't enough. So I want to leave you with the question of, why did we do it? So the containers on the far right side, we've always had those, what they call rigid containers for sterilized items. We've always had that. Why did we go to blue wrap? I'll just challenge us to think, when blue wrap came onto the market, if we had had a sustainability lens in mind, would we have made that decision? So whole person health, again, our workforce is critical. I've got 2 minutes. I'm going quick. This isn't a great picture, but it looks like a great big cage. But what is it? It's actually new at UVM Medical Center. We recognize, of course, that workforce health is critical. We had a major issue of bike theft, and so we were trying to encourage active transportation. At the same time, people didn't feel safe to bring their bike to work. So we tried to get this built for many years until we put a sustainability lens on it. And we opened this last week. And so now obviously we're able to support green, more active transportation. So we have healthier, happier employees at the same time with those climate co-benefits. So do you see yourself in here? If you're anywhere, if you're touching healthcare, there are so many places. You can't pull a string in healthcare without knocking on someone's door, touching at least 5 other departments whenever you do a project. We are just so connected. It's a very complex organization. So I challenge you to think about where do you fit? I believe there are solutions at hand. We can all play a part. And so I'm just going to leave you with this invitation. What part would you like to play? That's it. Thank you.
I think, Diane, you have set us up so beautifully. What part would you like to play? What part would you like to play in all of this? So amazing. I'm just, I'm amazed at what you have all brought to us, and I'm really excited about the conversations that we were both to have. So I'm going to invite the panel to come and join us at the front table now so that we can all see you. So come on up. So we're going to bring Bruce Barrett back up here as well. And while we're working on that technology, Bruce, know that we are about to find you again. And we wanted to give the panel an opportunity to speak with each other before we open it up more broadly, because we see so many interesting connections between the work that you're doing. We thought it'd be really beneficial to hear from you first. What are you interested in? What has sparked your imagination from things that you've heard of the other panel members? What questions do you have for each other? And so we'll just open the floor to you, and we have some time for this. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like we can play with this little. And when we're reaching that 15-minute mark, if you're still going, I'll just ring the bell, and then we'll move out to a broader audience conversation. So who would like to start us off? And Bruce, let's just make sure we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll start. I guess this is a question for probably our first three panelists. And I really enjoyed the mind-body connection and thinking about Tai Chi and these this coursework. I fully believe the science and the literature. And I think I guess my question to you is, and maybe it speaks to nudging as well and habit stacking, is how does it happen that you get people to try these or incorporate these habits or alternative practices for those who just don't want to do it? So these approaches can work for people who are already bought into at least trying it. And so I mean, I guess that's a question. Is there a trick? Is there something we can do to get other people kind of on the escalator towards trying alternative approaches?
I'll take a stab. So the trans-theoretical model or stages of change model, which was developed around addiction, tells us that we can't until people are ready. That by asking people to change things, stop smoking, stop driving, whatever you're going to do, will engender reactivity if you directly confront. So I think what we have to do is build systems of endearment, systems of support, systems of showing people how happy and healthy we are when we live an eco-wellness life. Nudging in healthy ways, but confrontation don't work.
I think it's a really it's an important question for the work that I do and that our lab does. Is we really try to help reframe mindfulness practices as another health behavior. We try to take it off the mantle a little bit of being something mystical and make it more accessible, like getting enough sleep, walking enough, drinking enough water. And we try to take that kind of neutral approach to meet people who might be put off by whether it's thinking that they're practicing a new religion or a form of spirituality, and making it more just about this regular thing that's really good for us. And we've shown that in health. And so we talk about how can we get mindful awareness in the water like fluoride has become. And we've done lots of studies trying to meet people in different ways that they need to be met. So I think one answer to your question is to really know about what audience it is we're talking about and try to find out ways in which they need to be met to engage in a practice like, for example, mindfulness meditation. So we've worked with your grandfathers getting cancer treatment. How do you message, do you want to join this mindfulness study? We've worked with busy physicians who say they are interested but never show up because they don't have time. So there's always this kind of getting to know you period that that's I think really essential to how do we best meet you, whether it's with a 10-minute or a 8-week version of this kind of training.
Question? Good. Okay. So in this work, I've discovered that it's the most unusual partnerships that are becoming so successful to the work. And I was wondering for anybody on the panel, if you found partners in unusual places, and if you can tell us a little bit about that. Oh,
You first.
me first? Let's see. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. I guess I won't describe necessarily new partnerships, but I'll just put a challenge out there that, on some days I need a data analyst just for an hour. On some days I met a communication specialist this morning. I might ask him to spend an hour with me. These are things that everybody can use their expertise, but might not have their usual hat on. And so that's what I was thinking. So I was thinking about the Planetary, the EARTHRx. Are there partners in our communities that might be of benefit? I think about a couple at the medical center. We have our garden educator here. She does that professionally. Might that be a good partnership? And the concept of the shared medical appointments, to me, is most effective when you've got different practitioners at the table. So Curiosity.
I think this partnership piece is really important. It really takes more than a village, a globe, and it takes so many different perspectives. When Helene was at our center at Harvard, along with our dean, we dismantled this division into a center without walls. It was a real sort of connected set of things. And part of it was to bring people together initially in integrative health. And what we found was that there were all these people doing similar things that didn't know about each other. And Helene had this sort of Cohen, which is what happens to a community when it becomes aware of itself. And so these resources start synergizing. What I think we're finding now is that this goes beyond just integrative health. As we think about planetary health, we find that there are people in the economy school that are thinking really similar questions, bigger scale budgets. We're seeing people in planetary and health sciences and nutrition. And so I think we're finding that by inviting people together, and I think what Dr. Prelock's doing here and this whole planetary health piece, and I think UVM is such a beautiful incubator, having people in forest ecology and medicine all coming together. But I think in some ways it's often surprising, but in other ways it's not surprising. But it's important to create these large containers, to create these transdisciplinary discussions, including people at our divinity school talking to people in atmospheric chemistry. But I think really it's going to take this complex challenge, a lot of diverse perspectives and those surprise connections.
We live in a capitalist society where money is extremely important, and it turns out that most of our partners are actually the people who pull the strings at high levels. Want to save money, and it is way, way cheaper to have people eat right and move around right, not toxify themselves or the environment. It saves trillions in healthcare dollars. We found partners here at the University of Wisconsin in the administration and financial sectors of the university and the healthcare system. As soon as they started looking at the numbers we've increased our size footprint by 15-20% over the last 10 or 15 years, while reducing our energy use by 10 to 15% for a total 25% per square foot savings in use of energy, which brings in many, many dollars. So I think that we want to be thinking about financial sectors as partners, and listening to the economists who have done the calculations and are showing us it is just way, way cheaper to act on climate change now, and better for our people.
I was going to ask a new question.
Just one thing, it's been on my mind. So this isn't a partnership in our own work, but just this past week, we've had colleagues in from Rwanda, and they have been working on gorilla protection, mountain gorilla protection in Rwanda. And their most important partners over the last 20 years have been to protect mountain gorillas have been the poachers. And so when Edwin Sabahuro, who was here yesterday speaking to our students, this amazingly emotional talk, how they turned poachers into rangers, and you can check CNN and you can watch videos on Edwin's work, but absolutely transformational and hugely emotive. And those are partners who were on the exact opposite side of the table when the problem started. And so it's just a really inspirational story to my students and myself, where sometimes your best partner is like on the complete opposite side of the table.
One more partnership thing to share. Is this on? I'm on a track called the Team Scientist track, where just by definition, we're encouraged and invited to work collaboratively across multiple disciplines. And when I heard that this was a track, I thought that was just what research was about. But it's nice that that's reinforced and supported. And for the most part, a lot of the studies I do, I work with very similar people to myself. And it's just a nature of a lot of the questions we ask and funding. And so while I love the idea of research, as research, it's been challenging. And then recently I stumbled upon some funding that involved foresters and food scientists and immunologists. And it's a study I probably talk about the least. In fact, I don't think anyone in my department knows about it because it seems so far out there from what I normally work in and do. But it is one of the most exciting because it's just this fest of ideas and perspectives that has really taken off. And so I think it's if it can happen with purpose, great, but it also can happen, I think, sometimes just by surprise, and it's a really good thing.
I guess my question is sort of to everyone, and I think part of the answer is like collaboration. But when I talk to a lot of people about thinking about planetary health more, I get a lot of excitement about the idea of doing things. And then when it comes time to implementing change and sort of putting in the effort to do those things, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And I'm guilty of this too. It's really challenging to find the time to actually do the work. So I'm sort of asking everyone here, how do you actually continue to do the work even when it's really hard?
I think we can all do so much more. I think in our hope with in what we heard from Molly yesterday, you know, hope is really good, and building on what's already happening. I think one metaphor I'm learning about, both as a scientist, but also I teach these practices in the community, is put on your own oxygen mask first. And if we start to take care of ourselves, and then we start to appreciate what wellness is, most of the time, and the research shows this, is that if you feel better, you're going to do better things for other people. And I think that's a way to start. And many people will want to take care of themselves. I know there's barriers that Bruce mentioned, but that's one way. And I think particularly in communities, and then that might move out into other ways of social activism. But if we feel crappy ourselves, we're less likely to be willing to support other bigger initiatives. So I think that's one very practical way, and I think it's one of those co-benefits of health, personal health and planetary health.
Sensing a natural pause in the conversation, we're going to open it up for the audience to ask questions. And we do have some microphones that we can bring around. So if you have a question, I see Beth and lovely man who I'm forgetting your name, but we know each other well. Bert, thank you. Jackie has a microphone right there, and then we'll start passing it around.
Thank you. So I'm really intrigued by this excellent conversation and the presentations. And what came to mind to me first this morning was how 80 years ago, almost 80 years ago, WHO defined health, you know, as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And it seems like it's taken us a long time to really adopt that view of health. What concerns me, though, I think, is the counter forces. And I started to hear some of this just now in the panel, but it seems like there are counter forces that need to be addressed in order for us to be successful in this endeavor. One is population growth. I mean, it seems to me that we cannot think about this planet as absorbing more and more people until it reaches the point where the resources are depleted and the population, because of that, starts to naturally die off. Science illiteracy. We have a lot of discussion about science, and yet I think there's a huge amount of science illiteracy in our population, and that makes it difficult to have these conversations with people. The whole issue of free market and capitalism forces is running counter sometimes to the things that are being talked about here. And something that I heard once at a meeting, which in a public health meeting, they said we'll never make progress in the area of public health until we can address the problem of psychotic individualism. And I think that is a huge problem. And then finally, just the fear of people who are different, whether they think differently, look differently, you know, those issues in human populations lead to discrimination, domination, even elimination. And So all of those forces to me run counter to what we're trying to accomplish here. I don't know how we're going to address those, but I think they need to be addressed.
Thoughts from the panel?
Those are hugely important comments. I think that we need to accept the fact that we are in the midst of the Anthropocene, where a quarter of the species that were here 100, 200 years ago are gone from our actions. Another quarter are likely to be gone. Climate change and global heating are happening. We cannot stop. We cannot reverse entirely. We can mitigate and we can adapt, but I think we have to accept the fact that this is very dire, and that lots of people are putting on the blinders and just going for what they want to do right now. With that acceptance, we then commit. We then commit to our own health and happiness and to each other. And we join forces with people, and we accept that even the people who are opposing us are good individuals who love their families and have positive virtue. With that, we can move forward step by step, working with each other. But it is a tough situation, and everything we do has a little bit of a carbon footprint, so we're all responsible. So you have to accept that fact and then commit to trying to leave the world a little bit better than you found it, and trying to work with not only your friends, but your enemies, to try to work together for solutions.
Okay, I guess I'm going to turn momentarily away from the very dark topic of climate change and go back to how do we get these ideas into the minds of society more broadly. And first, I want to give a shout out to everybody on the panel. I think that everyone is doing such phenomenal work. Special shout out to Chellie Nayar, because this is all extracurricular for her. That's a huge, huge endeavor. So my comment and then my question is, how do we get this material into the medical school curriculum? I see that all of this great work sort of withering on the vine unless you can get it into the minds of the people who are delivering the care. They are the foot soldiers for this effort. Unless we get this material into the medical school curriculum, it remains, I'm afraid to say this because it's all wonderful work, but I think it just remains in the ivory tower in the centers of academia. And we need people like Chellie. I'm a medical doctor myself, to be speaking to people about this, doing the nature prescription, et cetera. And I would also add that that there is a model for that. In my career, I've seen the evolution of quality and safety as something that we just now incorporate into practice in medicine. It's expected. I believe it's in the curriculum. If it's not in the curriculum, it's certainly something that we try to practice every day. And there's no reason why this, sustainability efforts and this other material couldn't become a part of that, and undergo the same sort of incorporation into our day-to-day practice. So my question to everyone is, how do we get this into the curriculum? There you go. And thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Oh, yes, we need to hear from our dean of the College of Medicine. Oh, Julie has.
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, amazing session last night, amazing session this morning. I've just been stunned by the work that people are doing, and congratulate the organizers and the speakers. And Chellie, my goodness, you make us all proud. It's amazing to come to a meeting like this to really find out what's going on. And C+ stinks. I was a pre-med once as well. So how it happens is exactly this, is awareness. And it is, when it was examined, I think, as you noted, this was woven through perhaps the curriculum, but not in any substantive or organized way. And that's what we need to work on. Now that I have the mic, I have a quick question. I saw a patient on Tuesday in my cardiology clinic. I'm a cardiac electrophysiologist, heart rhythm specialist, and he'd stopped exercising as much. He and his wife had stopped exercising as much. He's gained some weight, and he lost his dog of many years a few months ago. And there was sadness, and also the dog dragged him outside on a regular basis. So I found myself, we talked about this. I've been caring for him for a couple of years. This is an annual follow-up. And when I think back at it, I think I prescribed a dog. and well, I'm not sure what the carbon footprint of that is, but indeed, he made the comment, I don't want my dog to outlive me. And I said, don't worry about that. The dog will be okay. But being a dog, so bottom line is, how about and we have the Morgan Horse Farm, which I haven't visited yet and gives great peace, I'm told. How about interspecies activity in terms of wellness, health, getting outside, appreciating nature, so you end up giving back?
Absolutely. The antidote to pain and despair is hope and love. And a dog can be a love partner.
Quite large.
I think
I have a dog. I have a dog, but it is.
No free lunch.
First, I want to respond to your asking about getting Planetary Health into the medical school curriculum. Part of Osher, we are working on that. Adara, Christine, and I are working on a 4-hour Planetary Health curriculum, part of an elective for medical students on integrative health. So it's a start. So that should be out in the winter sometime. So the University of Vermont, of course, will be part of that. My question, Dr. Langvin made me think about it. I know she's not up there, but we are learning more and more the complexity of nature as we're destroying it. And that it's not so simple to say you need to take one element, everything is interactive. And we're just learning it more and more. We're learning it, soil science, our gut microbiome, and also the intact native forests and tropical forests. And my question is, how can we, and how are you including that it is so complex we don't understand it yet, that we don't want to destroy it? Is there a way to include that in all of our work? Because perhaps that also will be something, another nudge that people will realize the importance of keeping things intact. Thank you.
Thank you. Such a great question. And this is a question we get all the time, believe me. So as a funder of research in CCIH, this is one of the first things when we started putting together our strategic plan 6 years ago on whole person health. The first question is, well, how are you going to do this? It's too complicated. And what happens when people, for example, submit grant applications that are too complex? They get the dreaded fishing expedition death sentence, which guarantees your application is not going to be funded. And so we had to get around that. So we thought, okay, let's start with, we had a workshop in 2021 on whole person research. How do you do research on, and in this case was health. So we hadn't sort of getting into the environment and the planet at that point, but this could be applied. And what we started realizing is that the time was right for this. If we had wanted to have that workshop even 10 years ago, it would have just not succeeded. But the fact that our now advances in computational methods and our ability now to embrace masses of complex data and understand it, and also develop statistical methods to do rigorous explanation, such as the type of analysis that Peter presented, where you can actually derive relationships between various different components, not just one, two at a time, many at a time. This is new. We didn't used to know how to do this. And we have, of course, artificial intelligence, which is really has to be harnessed in a careful way in order to do all that. So I would say this is a very hopeful situation that we are right now because our ability to do this kind of complex work is matching our increased awareness of the importance of complexity. So I think we're in a good place. I'm optimistic anyway.
I'd just like to add to that, that we need to continue to cultivate a sort of level of humility of not knowing, and that in that unknown, there may be things that we regret if we act in certain ways. And I think, thinking back to my life as an ecologist, in species preservation, it's like, well, who cares about, this insect or this plant or that plant? And we appreciate that there are things about how individual species fit into ecosystems we don't know. But even from the human perspective, the utilitarianism, maybe that plant has the next cure for cancer or whatever. So I think there's just this one place where we leave a little bit of that humility that hopefully can compete with the capitalism of immediate response and needs. I think it's a balance.
Hi, everybody. I'm Taylor Ricketts. I work here at UVM. And I was really inspired, David, by some of your graphics about the water flowing through the planet and through us, and the air flowing through the planet and through us. And that as an education point and maybe a meditation point to sort of erase this boundary between people and nature, which doesn't exist. And so this might sound a little weird, but I wondered what you all thought from an education and clinical and in consultation with patients about another thing we share, which is just our microbiome. So there are more cells of other things than us in each of our bodies. And those things flow into nature and flow into us. And so we're essentially this like walking ecosystem, like a wetland is, or like a reef is, and not just us. So that to me, I'm reading this book about that by Ed Yong right now. We contain multitudes, right? So, and not only do we contain them, but it has like shaped us. It regulates our genes up and down. It trains our immune system, all this stuff. So we are just like another ecosystem walking around each of us. And I just wondered if that's in the clinic an inspiring idea to connect people to nature, or more disgusting than inspiring to people. Is that another way to sort of erase the line between people and the ecosystem of the planet?
I think it's beautiful. And I don't remember the concept you talked about, Ellen, about Otherworld with William Shatner. What is that called? Overview effect. I feel like in a way it helps provide an overview effect at a different level, at our universe inside. And if we take that, to the galaxy or universe level, we are, as an Earth, just a buzzing atom, and so it goes all the way down. So I just, the way you just described that, I think it provides a great vision and visual for this interconnectedness, and how it doesn't, again, I think I talked about where does nature end and we begin, and where is that line really drawn?
I guess I have maybe another perspective. I think I also agree. It's a beautiful idea. And I think it's one that a lot of us in the room share. But it is also something I've noticed that maybe isn't necessarily on the minds of people who I've seen in my short experience of being in clinic, where a lot of people are sort of more immediately concerned about the issues facing their mortality. So in clinic, I found that people don't necessarily want to talk about their whole health. They want to talk about their weight loss. They want to talk about their hypertension. They want to talk about the hospital visit that they just got out of after just being in another hospital visit and being in and out of the hospital for the past several years. And I think it's incredible that we can sort of talk about the whole health of people. But I think when I see how climate change is affecting people, it's affecting the people who aren't able to think about those things. And so how do we connect with those people and deal with the climate issues that are affecting those people in a way that they'll understand? And I think that's also important and sort of helpful for me to realize as I sort of figure out how I want to direct my experience.
We're going to take just one last question now. And Aaron, yeah. Yes, Chellie, yes. There was a question or comment from our Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences.
Thanks. I'm Leslie Parisi, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences and home of the Morgan Horse Farm and a lot of planetary health activities. And this is an amazing conference, so thank you. I just had a comment, and that was related to the idea that this takes time and there's not enough time. So there's a Vermonter, he's not originally a Vermonter, but Bill McKibben lives in Vermont. He's a writer and an activist, and he has a movement called Third Act. And the idea is that the baby boomers have done a lot to get us to where we are in terms of planetary health, so they owe us. And many baby boomers are retired or retiring, so they do have time potentially to help with this. So I just want to say that's one source of help to improve our planetary health.
Thank you so much. We're going, I know there are more questions. Scarlett, we see you, and hold on. What we want to do is make sure that we have time for you all to think and reflect on these things. And during this time, we invite you to come and, speak with each other, speak with the panel. We're going to pull back up our slides to give you all some questions to think about individually and in groups. And while we're getting that, can I invite everyone to stand up and stretch and just dance around in whatever way your body wants to move right now? Because we have been sitting and I haven't been thoughtful in the way that I try to be because I'm so involved. I'm moving, but I'm seeing that you are not yet moving. So please take care of yourselves. And friendly reminder, at any point during the day, if you would like to get up and move, feel free. I always invite my students to stand in the back, stand at the side and stretch, do what is best for you.
Yep.
And we will bring up some questions for you to think about in these next few minutes and to connect with, right? Do this in the way that makes sense to you. If you just want to sit and think about things yourself or jot some questions, or if you want to engage with our panelists about these questions, or if you want to just speak with your neighbors, people who you're already working with, somebody new you haven't met yet, think about where you are falling out in. What are you finding curious here? What's sparking your interest? What's one thing that you can commit to doing today, tomorrow, as soon as possible that helps you take the next step towards what it is that you are interested in? Do you want to look up a particular paper? Do you want to make a phone call or send an email? Don't send too many emails. We're all overburdened with emails, right? But like connect with someone. So we'll click on to the next one here.
We're getting there.
So we've
One more.
done that. There we are.
Okay, there we are.
So here we are. What is sparking your interest in general, or specifically about this connection between health, healthcare, integrative health,
It's okay.
planetary health? How is your thinking changing? When you came in here, you had some idea of what planetary health was. Is it still the same? Is it deepening? Is it broadening? Is there something that you're picking up that is helping you think about what does it mean for people to be healthy? What does it mean for the environment to be healthy? What does it mean for those two things to be connected? What's that reciprocal piece that we are the earth is us? What are you thinking in that realm? And if our goal here for everyone gathered is to build connections and inspire action, what's one thing you can do within your sphere of influence? So please take the next 5-10 minutes. We'll call you back with the bell to just think in this space. Any of these questions that's resonating with you.
And reminder about the.
And after you have a little bit of time to think about it, there's this QR code. QR codes are everywhere these days. They're amazing and powerful. And we have them here. When you are ready, after you've had some time to think about this, if you click on that QR code, it will bring you to a simple little survey where you can just jot anonymously your responses to this. And we are interested in collecting that. Both in the morning, you'll see the same thing in the afternoon. We're going to use that to help us figure out at UVM, in the Osher Center, in the Osher Collaborative, what are things that people are really interested in? How do we continue these conversations in the future? So think about where you fall out first, and then if you would be so engaged, go ahead and tell us on the QR code. So take a few moments and thank you.
Then you come around to like you weren't last year yourself and find out what's important. I feel like that's sort of slowly coming around. So it's like I need to do less and find, and you said like joy and like the thing that you really want to do and you're gonna do it well. I'm slow to,
Well, as a teacher of Tai Chi who was really neurotic and an stressed academic, I dragged my tiredness into class and I'm like, less is more.
Yes.
And I keep teaching myself that, but it is
isn't it? Remember the lesson you've already learned.
But I even think linking that to how do we bring people in,
So hi, Peter. Yeah, great to meet you. He's the dean of department.
It's environmental.
School
So
for environment.
I live in Spain.
Oh yeah.
I work in the environmental suite.
Yeah. My office is
Yeah. And
we recently sold it.
Oh, did it? I jumped ship and went to the first one.
Oh yeah, the most sustainable school in history.
And about human ecology.
Yes.
We all majored and not majoring.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a really. Actually, there's
Did you ever work with Julia Africa?
Yes.
Over
She worked with us for a little while as an undergraduate, and then she went into the school of public health.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she and I did some work together on with the Park Service with sounds. So we do a lot of work in acoustic and acoustic environment. But I know she like her work and traffic and all this stuff. It's like, oh man, it's totally intersecting with her. I've been in touch with her in a few years, but she was
young woman.
Yeah. Yep. Still in Boston. It's really cool. So great. Those were great presentations.
Had so much to think about.
It's really cool. I started in robotics and getting my head around everything going on here. It's awesome. And that postdoc, like the whole, like, I think what we're talking about is exactly what this is, right? Like seeing their continued building those bridges.
Yeah, so Patty announced like a competition on campus of like, let's bring other people together to the postdoc. But like I said in my slide, somebody that actually has the time to do all the real hard work. And I think having that.
And given the permission, it's okay, because it's so hard as a young academic. You need to really become an expert. Jack of all trades. But we need experts that see the connections.
I think the beauty of this one, kind of like some others out there, is that this postdoc has a little bit more freedom because if they do it into that Peter has put forward a tenure track position for them, right? So it's like they do it, like it's not. I need to publish papers as a postdoc. It's like, oh, if I do what I understand, I can also do it. So I think that is something that freedom.
I was thinking about that. It's so cool to do business and really get my head around
Our culture sector within Integrative Health, we give grants away, but they need to be
Right. And people who never worked together and those hospitals are and so we can visualize these hospitals together. Who's collaborating, co-publishing, but it's like and it's truly
Well, it's like David's point, like the research he never talks about is the one he finds the most interesting and with the most diverse. Like I really like that part of art,
which is its slides.
I missed when Taylor brought up like they were like contemplating. It's like I feel like just look.
Some guy in the back that's going to talk this out, like the focus and we funding and just start a resiliency program. So my PhD was at
Jonathan Thompson on my way down to see him in the next month. We haven't come up with a date yet, but okay, I'll have to talk to him.
Spent 15 years studying bird trees and comparative ecophysiology, and then that led into climate change. So it's an LTER.
Yep.
And so we don't brought these undergraduates there, and we go and resiliency, sound healing. Now they walk around the LTER and learned about indigenous practices, the history of the land. Now they have a big indigenous component there. Humans in landscapes, they have what they so much in college. So we have now made on. So if you look at like respiration, like but it's like, so that's my question. Those are my questions that I ask Bruce and David.
You know, like, so you're raising that like you're think about restrictions,
right?
You know, now
right, yeah,
how do you, that's my
but you know, are some of all 5 elements, you know,
can we do this aging migration? I think you can.
And so I was just thinking about like we're so
and this is gonna have an
you could say, hey, all this data.
I teach a lot on people's behavior and nudges and all these things. And I think one of the things that we need to back away from is like what works and what doesn't versus like some things work for some people, some things don't work for others, but they're all very different. And the median response might be working. Actually, we need to understand who it really doesn't work for might be more important than what the median response, whatever the intervention. So
and in some of those things, like just so close that you can focus on the physical, you can focus on meditation, breathing, or social.
And you can get those programs that by not even caring,
and they come every time. But it's like clicking on so slowly. They don't realize that they're.
We call it the
So you don't need to stop your conversations, but we wanted to just let you know two things. One, friendly reminder. If you would be so kind as to share any thoughts you have in that QR code, it'll just ask you basically these same three questions. We'd love to know where your conversations are right now, so feel free to share. We also wanted to let you know that right now we have a built-in 10-minute break. So you've been talking, continue talking in whatever way works for you. Feel free to go out into the sunshine. Bathrooms are right through this wall here. Please come back at 11:40 where we will have a contemplative practice. So thank you all for sharing feedback and continue the conversation. It's going to be fun because it runs into it runs into yeah, I'm not gonna wait. There was something people are asking about the slides. Have we gotten permission from the speakers to post them? And Romans.
And then where should I be?
Wherever you want. You can take one of these and walk, or you can just stand, whatever works for you. I am so energized personally by all of the great conversation I hear going on, and we want to invite you back into the space, both in body and in mind and in spirit, because I'm so excited to share with you one of our treasured people here on campus, one of my personally favorite people on campus who I do not get to spend enough time with. But this is Zach Ispalanda. Zach is a senior lecturer here in UVM's Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources. He is truly a beloved member of our UVM community. He has studied and practiced meditation for over 20 years. He's particularly interested in the role of contemplative practices and what they can play in undoing systems of oppression and creating conditions for collective liberation and sustainability. Perfect fit for what we have been talking about this morning. In addition to his role at UVM, Zach is a teacher at Inward Bound Mindfulness Education, a teacher at the Contemplative Semester, and he works with people throughout the country as a mindfulness coach and Dharma facilitator. Please join me in welcoming Zach. Yes.
You can take that one, Zach. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Such a pleasure to be with you all. I wish I could have been here for more of this, but I've been teaching about honeybees all morning. So yeah, well, I know lunch is approaching, and I don't want to put myself between you and lunch, so we're gonna go until noon. And so before we get started, so this is going to be guided meditation that we're going to do. So I'll walk you through it. But just before we start, I just want to thank you all for being here and doing this work. I know all of you are doing this work towards planetary health, if we want to frame it that way, in many diverse and different ways. And that's just such important work and labor these days in the world. So even though I don't know a lot of you, although I do know some of you, I know you're all doing work that's just so incredibly important. So thank you for whatever it is that you're doing to move us towards sustainability and reducing the amount of harm and suffering that's happening and will happen in the future. So I'm going to guide us in about 10 minutes of meditation, and then I'll stick around for a few minutes afterwards if anybody wants to talk about meditation, mindfulness, Dharma, and the relationship between that and personal, interpersonal, and planetary health, which is a favorite topic of mine. So I see these things as all inextricably interrelated, as I'm sure many of you do too. So talking to Christine for about 30 seconds before we got started, we came up with a plan. And luckily I do this a lot, although not necessarily for such a big group very often. And I'm going to lead us in a practice. Well, the first thing I'll say is this is 100% voluntary. And I feel like it's really important to say, especially in guiding people to go inwards and pay attention to how they feel and to actually notice what's going on in there. That can be intense. And I don't want anybody to feel like you have to do anything. So just, preemptive sort of caveat that this is all challenge by choice. And I'm going to offer instructions, and it might sound like I'm telling you what to do, but just know that you have agency, and I really want to encourage you to exercise your sovereignty, in what you do with your own mind. Not that we're going to do anything that intense, but that's relative. For some people, just sitting and being quiet with your eyes closed for a few minutes is really intense. for very valid reasons. So I'm going to sit down just to join you all in sitting. And we're going to do sort of a few preliminary simple practices to guide us in. And then the main practice that I want to do with you all today is called breathing with the trees. And this is a practice that I learned from one of my friends and mentors, Kaylin Sullivan, Two Trees, who some of you may know. She's based part of the time here in Vermont and has taught some really amazing classes here at UVM from time to time. She actually calls it "the trees are breathing us." So that's another way to think about it. So we'll begin, and I'll invite you first just to get as comfortable as you can. So just check in with your body, check in with your posture. Is this how you want to be for the next 10 minutes? If not, feel free to adjust. You can sit, you can stand, you can lie down if you want to. So just taking a few moments to notice your body, any adjustments, stretching, or moving that you need to do. You know, this is ultimately about well-being. And so let's start with that. You don't need to add any suffering to your experience right now. And you can close your eyes if you like, or just find somewhere to rest your gaze. And as we're beginning to settle in, I want to invite you to just recognize that for the next 10 minutes, we're entering into a different type of space, a different way of being. You don't need to accomplish anything or go anywhere. You don't need to perform or be anybody in particular. We're, as much as possible, just setting that aside for now to move into a different way of being where the main orientation is just to be present with whatever's arising, to not fight whatever you're experiencing, to not grasp after something different, just to experiment with what it's like to be really present, open, spacious, grounded with what's happening right here, right now, internally and externally. So you can take a couple deep breaths at your own pace. Just a nice big inhale, nice full exhale. Really try to notice, what does that exhalation feel like? Attuning to the quality of relaxation, letting go, release on the exhale. And on the inhale, noticing the qualities of expansion, the energizing quality of the inhale. And if you feel like either of these two energies is what you need, a little bit more energy and uplift, you can really emphasize the inhale. If it feels like some letting go, relaxation, and grounding would be helpful for you, you can emphasize the exhale. And then you can allow your breath to return to natural rhythm. And again, we'll bring our attention to the body. And you can just gently allow your attention to flow through your body from your head down to your feet. Just noticing all of the different sensations that are present. And also just seeing if there's anything you can relax. Is there any voluntary tension you're holding anywhere that you might be able to let go of? Relaxing the forehead, the jaw, shoulders, belly. And from here, we're going to move into a little bit of grounding, connecting with earth energy, the experience of being grounded and held. So I'll invite you to just notice the sensations of being supported by your chair, just in a simple, direct way. The sensations of pressure, contact, temperature. Just actually noticing that the chair is supporting you in space right now. And you can feel your feet on the ground. And again, just seeing if you can actually feel that. It's not about thinking about it, but direct sensations of feet on the ground. And even just with these simple experiences of being supported by a chair, of feeling your feet on the ground, you can connect to the experience of being supported, being held. To the qualities of solidity, firmness, groundedness. And then you can allow your attention to drop even lower, imagining it dropping down through the floor and just becoming aware of the ground and the earth below us, the soil, the water, and the massive slab of bedrock, miles thick, that is supporting and holding us right now. Just seeing if you can attune yourself to the presence of the earth and the bedrock below us. Again, connecting to this sense of solidity of being held and supported by the earth, quite literally. And then when you're ready, coming back again to the body. We'll bring a light attention again to the rise and fall of the breath. And just beginning to contemplate the in-breath and the out-breath. As you exhale, you can imagine the breath going out, mingling with the air in this room, expanding and diffusing out. Just imagine it expanding, finding its way outside, catching the breeze, joining the atmosphere. And thinking about the green photosynthesizing beings all around us, the trees, the grass, the shrubs, the flowers. And you can imagine that as you exhale, those green beings are inhaling that carbon dioxide. And in turn, they're exuding oxygen into the atmosphere. And as you inhale, you can begin to imagine that you're inhaling that very oxygen into your body. Imagining it's moving into your lungs, diffusing into your bloodstream, nourishing every cell in your body. And you can allow this view of breathing with the trees to expand, contemplating all of the photosynthesizing beings on this planet, the trees, grasses, shrubs, the phytoplankton in the ocean. And just simply recognizing that we're breathing with all the green, all the trees. So we'll just spend a few more moments just simply breathing, being aware that we're breathing with the trees, that just simply in this automatic function of our body, we're always already deeply interconnected with life on this planet. And then so beginning to close, just calling yourself back. If you're holding images of trees or anything else, you can just let that dissolve. Bringing yourself back to this room, this chair. Taking a moment again to ground yourself, feeling your feet touching the ground. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I'll invite you to just do a little bit of movement or stretching to help reawaken your body. All right, thank you all. It's really nice to spend a little bit of time with you. I hope you enjoy your lunch. If you felt like you connected to any sense of groundedness or peace or interconnection, just see if you can try to carry that through the day, bring it to your interactions, your choices, your actions. Okay, thank you.
And Zach will be with us for just a few more moments. If anyone would love to connect, Anisha, please come and connect with Zach in particular, and anyone else, come and just say hello and to thank Zach for his time here with us today. And lunch is now available. So we will be coming back in at 1 o'clock. So you have an hour. Please enjoy the beautiful sunshine.